Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 664 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again after we survived the Russian hacking attempt. It shall go down in channel history. We survived.
And of course, we are back and live again after surviving a very strenuous and difficult situation where we actually got hacked. We are back on air, and we've taken every single precaution that we can to secure this channel and make sure that it will not be as easy to attack again. It was actually insane because as soon as we got off air, we got notified by Google that there had been an unknown login into the account from an undisclosed location. And once we went onto the Google dashboard, there was a giant critical security threat, bold and in red, showing us that someone had gotten into the account. We were able to luckily do everything that we could to boot them out and also change everything so that way they could not get in again. So the channel did survive, and not only did it survive, but it slaughtered the fundraiser at the exact same time, raising $4.4 thousand out of a $3,000 goal, spiting the bots in every single way, because not only did they not delete this channel or mess with it in any major way, we also were able to blow past the fundraiser goal. So all in all, it was an amazing night, an absolutely incredible one. And I have to thank all of y'all so much for having patience and understanding while we were dealing with that situation. It was a very, very stressful one on our end. You could probably see a little bit of our stress bubbling out on air near the end of the stream. But beyond that, we are very fortunate to have been able to shut this person down, whoever it was, because Google actually did not tell us where they were from. It just said that there was an unknown device that is logged into the account, and that was it. So sadly, we have no information to work off of beyond there was someone who had logged into the account that we didn't approve. Although we had two-factor security and everything else, they still got in somehow. So hopefully that does not happen again, because that was a insane ordeal and the first time that's ever happened in channel history. And luckily nothing really came that bad out of it. But we have huge news to cover tonight, because while we were away over the past 48 hours, we have several big things to cover. First, and the most important, is that the Ukrainians have officially taken complete control of the Russian stronghold of Krynky on the left side of the Dnipro River, which is massive news, and we have multiple videos proving that today, and also proving that the Russians have lost some very precious materials and resources while trying to create a foothold inside of this village. Not only that, we have really big news that we have also wrapped up the first official day of Enforcer Gun Review filming, doing our first 2 gun reviews. We have actually already put out a photo shoot for one of the guns that is already been reviewed on Patreon. And, you know, we will, of course, be doing photo shoots for every single gun that we review, and they'll be going on Patreon. But beyond that, it is just incredibly cool that we were able to finally do that today. The set has been set up, the filming has been done, and we've gotten the first gun review largely complete without the shooting segment, and it looks incredibly good. Really quickly, I actually am going to show you all this. It is on our Patreon, but let me go down and find this so that way I can show this to y'all, because we already have the thumbnail made for one of the videos. So let me take y'all to it, and it is, let me make sure that I can get this just right. It is this right here. That is going to be the thumbnail of our first video. Well, not our first video. This is actually going to be the second one that's put out. But it's the first photo shoot that we have on Patreon. Incredibly cool to know that this is finally happening. We're really excited about this. We can't wait to show it to all of y'all. And I bet y'all are going to have an absolute blast watching these things. We tried to go into as much information as we could about them without getting a little bit too hyper-technical. But it is really going to be incredibly neat to finally get to show y'all a gun review on this channel. This was actually a picture taken on the set, not to show y'all everything else, because it was a whole photo shoot with about 9 other pictures inside of it, but it's going to be really cool to try and get these reviews out to y'all and show y'all a lot of the firearms that are used out there in the modern world right now. But let me close out our Patreon, and let's move on from all of the announcements that we have and on into the breaking news of the day. Moving on into our first bit of news, we were able to confirm that the Ukrainians have taken complete control of the village of Krynky. For about the past few weeks, it has been up in the air as to whether the Ukrainians are holding this or not. We have seen video footage showing Russian forces moving down the road into Krynky. Most of those forces were being destroyed, but we also saw Russian forces that were apparently inside the village near the area of Korsunka on its eastern side, and this threw up a lot of questions as to whether or not the Ukrainians really did control the entire village. But 3 separate videos have come out in the past 24 hours alone confirming that the Ukrainians have complete control of Krynky. Moving on into our first video clip, we got to see the Ukrainians inside of Krynky, and this one right here. Also, the Reddit interface is completely changed, which really threw me off today when I was making this stream, but we're going to be muting this. We can see the Ukrainians moving through the village of Krynky through multiple different areas. We see him laying low here with an AK-74. Pretty interesting, pretty neat. Not really.
With a suppressor at that.
Dude, with a can that cost some coin. But we can see them moving through the ruins of Krynky. Of course, Krynky has sustained a lot of artillery fire, not just from the Ukrainians before they pushed into the village, but also from the Russians as well during the battle of the village that's been occurring over the past few weeks. We can see there a large crater created by some kind of a Russian shell. And we can now see the Ukrainians moving through the ruins. It looks like they're moving towards a basement. We now see them darting in between the destroyed village yards, in between the houses. We can also see the soldiers get low for just a moment, most likely because something flew over. We can now see them eating some food and continuing to move on through. Now, that tree line over there that y'all saw on this clip, not to geolocate anything in this footage, because, you know, of course, with Ukrainian clips, I don't go into exact geolocations. We did geolocate literally every part of this clip earlier, but this is confirming that they are towards Korsunka, which is on the very eastern side of the village and is, in fact, another village next door to Krynky. So we know from this clip alone, just this first one, that the Ukrainians pretty much control the entire width of the village from east to west. We can now see them moving through even more ruins. This is a little bit further on inside of the village itself. Once again confirming that they are in there. We now see some Ukrainian soldiers taking a rest for a moment, most likely trying to acclimate their next plan as they then move on forward through the ruins. We now see that they've made it to some kind of a well, and it is in fact a well, and it looks like they are actually getting water out of it. Hopefully, now I gotta say this as a big hopefully this well has not been poisoned by the Russians, because open pit wells like these are incredibly easy to poison. You can just drop a dead animal inside of it and the water is pretty much poisoned. So, well, for a while, it's not going to be permanent, but hopefully there's something like that at the bottom of this open pit well. We can see a dog right here, apparently. And then the video clip ends. But this is only part 1 of the 3 different clips we got showing Ukrainian forces inside of Krynky just over the past day. That's actually part 3, so I'm going to bring y'all to part 2 real quick as I hear a loud smack in Matthew's microphone. I don't know what that was. But anyways, moving on to this clip. We see the Ukrainian soldier walking through Krynky. Of course, we're not geolocating this, but we can tell that this is on the northern side of the village, near to the river. That's the end of that clip, but once again, giving us the slight sounds of firefighting going on, mostly towards the southeastern end of the village, and also showing us, once again, clear control of the village of Krynky. The fact that this Ukrainian soldier is walking alone on the northern side of Krynky, somewhere around this area, you know, just the northern side, I'm not going to say exactly where, but along the northern side, in that he's alone, it's showing us that there must be a clear line of control that is farther south than where he is at the moment. Otherwise, he would not be just walking casually down the middle of an open street and with firefights happening about a half-mile away. That would not be happening if the town was not under complete control. But moving on to this third clip, we can then see what was probably some footage from that firefight we just heard of in the last clip, which is right here.
Селище Кринки. Ми на нулі. Зайняли дом. Тепер ми тут хазяйнуємо. Може хтось пізнає свій дом.
Wait, did that guy just say Don? Wait a minute, hang on.
Знає свій дом.
Oh, dude, it's Katarov 2.0. It's Katarov 2.
Don, I want to tell you, we've taken a Krynky at Don. For Ukrainians at Don.
Ну, дом був, дім був дуже гарний так. А ділечка, всі діла. Колись. Ну, загалом село знищене повністю. Все село знищене. Ось такі отвори.
And we can see some bullet holes in the wall right there, most likely from the prior firefight we just heard in the last clip. And then the video ends. But all three of these videos, not going through the exact geolocations, and we also didn't geolocate them onto the map. We know where the clips were, however, most of them except for the last one, because it was inside of a house, and we didn't get like a floor plan of each house in Krynky to figure out which one it was. But on the other two clips, we were able to geolocate them exactly, and they were pretty much on both opposite ends of the village of Krynky. And once again, to hit this home, that shows that the Ukrainians do have complete control of Krynky from east to west and north to south. From what we understand, the front lines we have drawn onto the map are fairly accurate, except for this one here at Korsunka. And we're going to actually adjust this so that way we can make sure it's as accurate as possible, because from what we understand, the Russians still control Korsunka. So the lines of control are going to look something like this, most likely, with the Ukrainians possibly contesting Kozachi Laheri, and the Ukrainians in clear control of Krynky, with a front line that is either inside the forest or just on the very edge of the forest near the southern side of the village. Regardless, it is still a huge turn of events to see that the Ukrainians have been able to take this village. It's a very key stronghold for the Russians, considering that it's really the only thing that was stopping the Ukrainians from pushing deeper towards the Oleski Sands and through the forests just north of it. This is a huge problem for the Russians, a massive one by no mistake. With this village now under Ukrainian control, and Russian army are probably going to have a very difficult time operating inside this forest, this may give the Ukrainians the leeway they need to advance towards the Oleski Sands and start creating a bridgehead that could be used further by more Ukrainian forces to funnel over heavier equipment, heavier machinery, more troops, and overall just more firepower onto the weaker Russian garrisons in this area. It is also within what we understand to be the Russian weak spot in this area, and with the new VDV unit being moved in, practically green, and losing a lot of its equipment already, we could probably assume that the Russian units that the Ukrainians are going up against have been attrited so heavily the Ukrainians will most likely be able to push them back out. But moving on to that, I need to show y'all some proof in the pudding, because a T-90M was attacking Krynky today, tried to advance, and we actually geolocated this one the best we could, because the only paved road in Krynky is about right here. The T-90M advanced from Korsunka down into the village itself on the northeastern side and was hit and then abandoned by the Russian crew somewhere on the northeastern end of Krynky. Once again showing that Ukrainian forces are in this area of the northeast of Krynky, once again confirming it's under complete control, and also showing us that the VDV brigade, well more so division, that was sent into this area was actually well equipped, oddly enough, although they have almost no training. And this is starting to be a lethal combination, because these poorly trained troops are expending valuable equipment at a breakneck speed. But here's the clip. And we're going to mute that, but we can see the T-90M moving down the road. And also, y'all, we actually have a great geolocation tip right there, those two greenhouses. So let's go here, and bada boom, bada bing, there they are right there. So this T-90M had literally just driven into the very northeastern side of Krynky, and the Ukrainians already had a unit in this area with a kamikaze drone available to knock this thing out. So right now at this moment, looking at this clip, The T90M is literally parallel to the greenhouses about right here. And we can also see that shed right over there, somewhere in that area. That also confirms that this is the spot. We can also look across the street where the forests begin, and we can see that right over here on this left side of the clip as well, thus confirming this T90M is advancing from Korsunka. And based off of how most of the more elite and well-trained, well, what we would assume to be more elite vehicles with more well-trained crews, which isn't the case because it's the VDV, we're assuming that the new VDV's division is largely operating its combat operations out of Korsunka and trying to push from the northeastern side of the town and into the center of Krynky. There's apparently another Russian brigade or a division somewhere planted at Kozachi Laheri or in between Kozachi Laheri and the Aleski Sands that is also trying to push through these small country roads that take them home to the place they don't belong, southern Ukraine, and then they get blown up along the way. Those forces are using largely older T-72s, and also BTR APCs, while the VDV is using T90Ms and BMDs. But moving on back into this clip, we can see the FPV drone coming on in. And
they smacked it right on the rear, I'm telling you.
Man, they smacked that thing pretty damn well. And we can see that it came to a stop. We can actually geolocate where it came to a stop as well, because it has a pretty significant building near it. So it appears that it came to a stop right there, because we can see the tower of the building, we can see it cast a shadow, we can also see the rest of the compound attached to it right here, and that small shed on the side, which appears to be right there. And so it appears that the tank was hit at the greenhouses up here. Well, actually, hang on, let's do a quick check. Okay, so there's actually a couple of buildings with towers along the way. So either it got stopped about right here, where this tower is, or stopped about right there, where it appears there may be another tower-like building. Nevertheless, it did get hit a second time. Ooh, right on the roof of the turret. And we can see some kind of spall or some kind of a spark pop off the turret, and we can now see that apparently the gunner has been knocked out, and the turret is now spinning out of control. We can see the driver ram this thing into a ditch, trying to get it off the road, and now traveling off-road. And it appears that the gunner has now regained control of the turret. The T90M has now come to a stop. Sadly, there's so many dirt roads in this forested area south of Krynky, we probably wouldn't be able to geolocate this part well. But that's
I think the fellow's tank was overheating a bit. I saw some smoke coming out of it.
Man, I did too, man. They need to put some water in the radiator. But also,
man, give him some milk.
Man, he needs some milk. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that clip. And we can clearly tell by the end of that clip that the VDV, equipped with, of course, the finest Russian equipment that the Russians can afford, are still getting beat pretty heavily on the northeastern end of Krynky. But moving down to Kozachi Laheri, we also saw that the 36th Marine Brigade was tearing apart some Russian positions, which was very interesting, because we don't really know at the moment whether Kozachi Laheri is being contested by the Ukrainians or the Russians are holding it. We can't really tell, but we can see their positions on the northern side of the town, and they're being hit quite well. Like this one right here. And also, once again, just to confirm, there you can see in the background the forests that kind of stretch onwards and up into the area of, well, more so Krynky, over to the left side of the screen. And the Aleski Sands are somewhere almost right on the horizon out there. Well, you can see some of the Russians walking around like, oh, блядь, what happened, блядь. And y'all know what happened? The same thing again. The badaboosh. Oh!
The Russians said, I've heard the old saying, блядь, lightning never strikes twice in one place. And they didn't understand. This isn't lightning, this is the Ukrainians, and they're going to smack you.
Man, they said, lightning never strikes twice in the same place. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian drone operator, want to see me do it again? It slams the same bunker a second time. But moving on
the Ukrainians are a different type of lightning. They're not your average type. They're the, electrical type. Man, strong type of lightning.
Dude, they're a different breed, man. They got that dog in them. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see that the Russian artillery, specifically a Grad battery, was attacked at the village of Chelberta, which is on the west side of the Aleski Sands, and was most likely an artillery battery trying to provide fire support for the Russian forces that are in Kozachi Laheri and in the forests outside of Krynky as they try and reaffirm a foothold. But it appears that in the process of doing that, this counter battery was lost. Oh, but we can see that they highlighted that this is a grad. We can also see a large ammo storage there. Y'all get where this is going. I bet money y'all do. And it's already been hit off camera, but the camera is now back on. And we can see the drone flying right over to get a panoramic shot of the scene as a fire now envelops the ammunition stores and hopefully the grad within it. Oh!
Oh!
They almost lost a drone.
It graduated to exploded.
Oh, it graduated to destroyed. Dude, they put that up on screen like it was Terminator destroyed. But wonderful to see. Love to know that they were able to knock out a grad battery and, well, not really a grad battery, but a grad launcher, and also its ammunition that went along with it, because, of course, destroying the toy with the batteries included is a big deal. But moving on from Chelberta and towards the area of Kardashinka, we got to see a Pantsir S1 defense system firing off its 30mm autocannon, but we couldn't really tell how effective it was because we didn't see a drone getting visibly destroyed, but we do get to see hear the sounds of their 30mm autocannons firing, and also the prox fuses going off in air. I would like to say that it's doing something, but we can't even tell because the fuses are exploding in such a wide spread. There's no way that it's just on one specific area. And well, that's the end of the clip right there. Very interesting to see a Pantsir in operation. We have rarely ever seen one being actually used inside of Ukraine, and it's one of the rare exceptions because for the most part, from what we understand, a lot of the Pantsirs have actually been moved around Putin's summer mansion near Sochi and also around the Moscow air defense perimeter. So seeing a Pantsir anywhere near the front lines is actually a big shock and kind of a surprise, and showing that while the Russian infantry in the area of Kherson is very depleted as far as equipment goes, apparently in the vehicle category, they are being reinforced with some kind of additional equipment, such as T-90Ms, BMD-4s, and also Pantsir S1s now, possibly showing that these are some stopgap attempts to try and reinforce these weakened infantry units that have also been decently attrited just due to exposure, but we don't really know how effective this is going to be. Nevertheless, we are going to be keeping our frontline analysis of the area, our green, yellow, and red codes identical, because from what we understand at the moment, Russian force strengths from area to area and also the geographical obstacles in each of these areas of the front line still remain consistent even to this very day. But moving on from that and over to the direction of Odessa, we did get to hear some really good news that they are still underway on repairing the cathedral that was nearly destroyed from a Russian attack several months ago. This cathedral is a World Heritage Site and an incredibly beautiful one. Let me take y'all over to Odessa and show y'all this beautiful cathedral. I believe it was built sometime during the early 1800s. Here it is right here. And let me show it to y'all, because the inside of this thing is absolutely gorgeous before the war. Of course, the Russians, from what we understand, actually deliberately targeted the cathedral, considering it's a cultural heritage site and considered a part of Ukrainian culture and history. They did try and attempt to destroy it and caused some pretty significant damage to the cathedral. The Ukrainians immediately went to work trying to restore the cathedral and get it back into its original condition. As you can see, it is a beautiful cathedral, probably one of the most beautiful out there inside of Ukraine, and so far they're getting some pretty decent progress, but there's still a lot to go, and hopefully they will be able to continue the repairs and renovation processes so that way this can continue to be a World Heritage Site for hundreds of years to come, much like many buildings in Ukraine already are. But moving on from the port of Odessa, and just a little side bit of news, a little bit of a silver lining of this entire war, that luckily they'll be able to hopefully get that thing fixed and ready to go again. We're now going to be moving into Russia, because the Russians don't like culture. The Russians are quite uncultured, I would have to actually say, with all honesty, and that's why they attempt to destroy other nations' forms of culture, including the cathedral inside of Odessa. One thing that they've particularly started to attack recently is car culture. Many of y'all know of the beautiful cars that exist out there on the interstates. The Cadillac, the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, you know, the Volvo. I mean, the Range Rover, the Porsche, the BMW, the Audi, the Hyundai, the Honda. All of them have pretty interesting qualities. For the most part, they're all also quite nice looking as well. But the Russians have decided tonight that they're going to be attacking the car culture and trying to lobotomize it for the best they possibly can. Some of y'all may even know that there are some really ugly cars out there in the past, like the, what was it called, Matthew? The Pacer car?
The Pacer was one of them. The Gremlin was another hideous one. And there's also the Pontiac Aztec. That's another abomination of the car culture. Oh, yes. Look at that. That's bad.
So some of y'all may know the Pacer is a pretty ugly car. And I don't think we all can deny it. This thing looks like it got dropped off the back of a wagon and nobody really told anyone about it. And it just, you know, kind of did this. But interestingly enough, the Russians have decided that this just wasn't ugly enough. They needed to torture the world with something new and uglier. And they decided to come out with this thing. I don't even know what it's really called, but we put it on our Twitter today. We are calling it the Bliat-mobile because this has got to be the ugliest car.
Oh.
Oh! Dude, this thing looks like it eats glue. It's terrible looking.
Man.
It's the ugliest.
It really looks like one of those vans, you know, the vans that they have where the wheelchairs can roll into them and you can drive the vehicle. But it's worse design than that. Like, this is like top tier bad design. This is up there with like the Iranian helicopter design. This is really bad.
Dude, I don't even think that anything could look this bad. Like, I was actually shocked today seeing this and having you tell me that this isn't like a fake thing that was made by an AI. This is a real car. This is the ugliest real car I have ever seen. Not only that, but what the hell is up with the hood? Like, did they have to make it this ugly? They could have made the headlights bigger. They could have done something. This has got to be the worst car I've ever seen. And of course, it's from Russia. Everyone's like, what the hell is that? I don't know.
Also, like, what were they thinking? They made this really, they tried to make it sleek, if you can call it that, or smooth, I guess is the better word. It's not really sleek, it's just smooth looking on the sides of it, real glossy. And then they put, like, this industrial, like, semi-truck grates on the, like, step panel on the side, like you're getting into an industrial truck. And also, I guarantee you, they found those wheels of Alibaba. I've never seen those wheels anywhere. Like, those are Alibaba wheels, 100%.
The rim diameter on these wheels is so small, you could take them off, put them on a bike, and train your 6-year-old child how to ride a bike with these things. I've never seen tires that small. I bet you the top speed of this thing is like 35 to 40 miles an hour if we actually got down to the stats. It's just hideous. It's just so... And what are these? What is this porthole on the side? Does it breathe? Like, what is that for?
That's for the cheap engine that they found from China. When it starts backfiring, that's where the flames fly out.
Dude, from what people are actually saying in the chat, this thing's electric.
I see some people calling it, it's called amber. If it's called amber, they need to sound the alert because this thing is causing some trouble.
Dude, they need to sound an amber alert because this thing looks like it will nab your child off of a playground right here. This thing looks bad. Like, this thing looks like it sits in its house and just does nothing all day. This thing looks like it's a, this thing just looks bad. I don't even really know how to explain it. It's just an ugly car. And the Russians had to come out with this abomination in a crime against humanity in the middle of the war. So they're adding once again to their crimes against humanity list. And I'm sure that it'll only get worse as the war keeps going. But
I think mainly what this shows is there are no Western engineers or designers left with any competence in Russia anymore, and they're left really with just their own people because this thing right here is like, I think a 5-year-old could have made something better than this. Like, what chassis is this even based on? Like an MRAP or something?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. And oh my lord, man, I wish we could find out. Let's see, amber electric car. Let me go see if I can find any additional. That's the first thing I found, Matthew, is Russia presents electric car amber. Public wishes it hadn't. That was the first thing that popped up. I cannot, let's see. Wait a minute, hang on. So we got something here. So next it says, a prototype of the amber electric car was presented in Russia. The manufacturer assures that all components were made in Russia and the car will be launched on the market in 2025. And the side holes for paddles. So they also next is like hitting at the side holes. What are these? Like, what purpose do they serve? It's an electric car. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I want to say almost like it's an air vent, but if that's an air vent for the engine cooling, that is the worst placed one I've ever seen. And also the intercooler down there at the bottom has one hole for it. There's literally no like ventilation for the engine up front because they've literally blocked it off with a huge body panel. I don't even understand how the engine is going to work. Like, how's it going to be cooled? Unless it's like a motorcycle engine.
I have absolutely no idea, but this thing is just hideous. I had to show y'all what the Russians were up to today inside the Russian Federation because, you know, there are people out there, I assure you, and there are some people who are watching the stream, although a small number of them, that will say things like, the Russians are pretty good. Like, you know, the Russians can do things. And this is what they do. These are the things that they do. And I think it's very important to always keep this in mind because people say a nation that will make this thing is on par with the US. And I just can't agree with that because the United States actually comes up with some pretty decent cars. I mean, yeah, sure, we have like a miss here and there, but we design like a brand new like 20 car designs almost every year. The Russians come out with one like every 10 years, and this is the one they came up with. Just the ugliest thing ever. And also it's got these tow hooks on the front like built in because they know it's going to break down. Like, this is the crap you would find on a T-72 when they're loading it onto a train or something. What is, you know what, we're going to have to get off of this because
and also people were saying it's electric, but I see a gas cap on the back, like the left
you cut out there
side of it. Like, I don't think this is, I said, you see the gas cap on the rear side panel? I don't think it's electric. I think it's gas.
I don't know. They're saying it's electric, but it did look like it was gas, and it had a radiator in the front grille too. So who knows? Maybe they're just false advertising it, and they're going to get an electric one by 2025. I have absolutely no idea. But anyways, we're gonna move on from that hideous abomination. You know, it's a war crime, best way to put it. And we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns inside of Ukraine. We only have one from yesterday, but it is showing a montage of the training that the Belarusian Volunteer Corps is going through. This was filmed in the summer of 2023 this year, but this is the first time we've ever seen the footage, and we wanted to show y'all what the Belarusian volunteers were going through, because this is the famous unit that Mustache Man is from. And so here's the clip. Look at that dog. What the dog doing? Oh, we're going to have to mute that because it's that music that's always copyrighted. And yeah,
the didgeridoo?
No, it's like some Mongolian kind of throat singing music, but it's always copyrighted. Oh, there you got a Bren. It seems like the Ukrainians are starting to become big fans of the CZ Bren. But I'll tell you this. I know this is like trench clearing training. Gotta be honest with y'all though, I don't know what kind of form this was. This is called the one-handed Draco Bren hold. I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't do that if I was wanting to be accurate. I mean, yeah, it will work around a trench corner, probably. It would keep their heads down or make them, you know, back up or freak out, but yeah, I don't know. We can see them continuing to advance around the corners of the trenches. It looks like they're training with live ammo.
And also, this looks like Nam instead of Ukraine.
Kind of does, doesn't it? It's pretty thick underbrush. Oh, cute puppy. See them continuing to advance through the trench.
And also, I see some people insisting that vehicle was electric. Since when do we take the Russians' word for anything? Like, I'm not putting anything past them. Remember, there was some guy in the U.S. that was trying to push an electric semi-truck that didn't even have an engine in it. Don't believe what you're told. I have a feeling that had a gas-powered engine in it because it had a gas cap and a radiator, or an intercooler. So, you know, don't take the Russians' word for it.
We'll find out one day, but
we'll see.
But moving on from that, we also got to see the 152nd Brigade in training. This was actually pictures taken from this year, and there were some pretty interesting pictures showing a lot of rifle training. 2 out of the 3 pictures are just rifle training, and we can also see that this guy appears, from what I can tell, to be using maybe a Yugoslavian AK, which I believe those were like Zastava M70s or something along those lines. It looks like a Yugoslavian one, just based off of how the gas tube and barrel is lined up, and also the front, I guess you could say, muzzle device, if you want to call it that. And also we can tell it's a 7.62x39 rifle because of the curvature of the mag. That also appears to be a Polish surplus mag, possibly, due to its shape and construction. It's a steel mag. But beyond that, we can't really tell much more about the rifle. But we can see this Ukrainian soldier in training in the middle of the winter and also doing a little bit of run with the fellas. And we all know everyone loves a little run with the fellas. Moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and on to our next one, we got to see that new Cobra drone we just heard about on Sunday being tested with its launcher today. And so here's the clip. Ooh, get him! But anyways, that's the end of the clip. And also, I was right. It was a Yugo rifle, but it's a 72B1, not a like a Zasova M70. I think the M70 was like their almost like a machine gun kind of an AK. But anyways, really interesting to see them testing out this new Cobra attack drone. It has a launch, well, it's launched from Catapult, as you can see from the caption. It carries a 15-kilogram warhead, which is fairly decent, and it can also travel about 300 kilometers. So pretty decent range and some pretty decent hitting power. Probably would be very effective at attacking airfields with its explosive device pretty far into Russia. And when I mean pretty far, not the farthest, I mean these are going to be pretty close to the front lines as far as Russian airfield distributions go at this point, but it still will be able to cause some damage. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we could also see some drunk Russian conscripts getting into a fist fight. And I gotta say, this is just fun to watch. So here's the clip.
Oh, that was a meaty one.
Look at him, he's like, I don't know what to do. That wasn't really that big of a fight. It was really just more of a punch.
That was lame.
But I gotta tell
I
you.
want my pay-per-view money back.
Man, I gotta tell you this, man. That first punch, though, was solid. Look at this thing.
No, that was actually a very weak punch,
Yeah,
believe it or not. It just sounded meaty.
Dude, that was about as solid as the wind. It was like a light breeze whenever that guy's man boob in the shoulder. But anyways, moving on from that out to that clip, we're now moving on into the Russian casualty report. And we have some pretty interesting stuff to show in the casualty report. Starting off with the highest losses of the day, which is in the infantry category. 1,140 Russian troops were knocked out. A fairly
Oh my
large number.
gosh. And also, they only got 2 Bobcats, but they rounded it out to 1,200 special equipment destroyed. I'm very happy about that.
Man, some days it's just got to make sure it's a little bit of an even number. You know what I mean? But nevertheless.
Yeah, they got to level out sometimes, like the artillery, too. It's an even number now as well. They didn't do the UAV, though. It's at 6,299.
Man, you know, they gotta keep you waiting on some of them, you know? Like, they're probably going to round that one out once it gets to 7,000, though. But nevertheless, 1,140 Russian soldiers have been knocked out over the past 24 hours. A very good number. I cannot deny it. Very good number. Not the highest we've seen in the war, but certainly getting on up there and showing that the Russians are still losing a fairly large amount of infantry and equipment. Not only that, but 19 armored personnel carriers were also destroyed today, along with 20 supply trucks, 15 tanks, 9 drones, 1 cruise missile, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and the 2 Bobcat skid steers. It was a decent day overall as far as the loss report has gone, and hopefully we'll get to see that these kinds of losses continue through the winter, because it's continuing to attrit Russian forces, getting rid of the trained Russian troops that were there originally, and also making sure that the reinforcements that come in are going to be less equipped and less trained than before, and probably lead to even higher casualty reports. These are numbers that
And also, I'm seeing a ton of people asking, can we see yesterday's losses report as well to compare? Because apparently they were pretty high.
Let's see here. Let me go to Twitter. Peter, the Twitter's here. And let me go to the Twitter. And let me go to the profile. Oh, man, look at that. We were putting up stuff 3 hours ago. Love to see it. By the way, if y'all haven't, make sure to follow our Twitter. We got 12.5 thousand followers of the Lee Spring Army on Twitter. And it's always looking for more recruits to be a part of the Lee Spring Army front on Twitter. So make sure to go join it. Link in the description below. But we've got to get to the Kyiv Independent, because there is a lot of interesting stuff that the Kyiv Independent says. But the most important thing that we gathered from them is the casualty report. We only used Kyiv Independent for the casualty report. And so let me scroll past today's, which was published 19 hours ago. And let me go back to yesterday's. It should be a little bit further down. 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 And there we go. All right. Oh my God. Wow, these were high.
Dang. These are massive.
So going over yesterday's casualty report, due to popular request, 1,090 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours. But let's compare that to today. And let's just drag that over here so that way we can pop in between them. 1,140 versus 1,090. So a 50 troop loss difference in advantage of today's losses. But every other loss category was huge compared to this one. It appears that they lost 60 armored personnel carriers yesterday, an unbelievable number, equivalent to 2 entire battalions of the Russian army being wiped out, compared to today's 19, which was quite high, but nowhere close to this. 56 supply trucks were also destroyed yesterday compared to today's 20. We also saw that 44 main battle tanks were knocked out in 24 hours compared to today's 15 main battle tanks. We also saw that the counter battery was hard at work the other day, knocking out 38 Russian artillery systems, while today's counter battery only knocking out 15. On top of that, the drone losses were 12, today's was 9. However, yesterday, they were able to destroy 3 entire MLRS batteries. Well, not batteries, but launchers. Today, none were destroyed. But today does have a bit of an advantage. The Ukrainians did shoot down 1 cruise missile. Apparently, the Ukrainians didn't have the opportunity to do that yesterday. Both days, they destroyed 1 anti-aircraft launcher, a fairly consistent rate of losses. And also, they lost 4 Bobcat skid steers yesterday and only 2 today. However, I thank y'all for pointing that out, because usually the Monday casualty report does go unnoticed on the stream because we have a lot to do. And also tonight, due to nobody's fault or anything, but we were a little bit behind in making the news, so I didn't really get to skim over it to tell you. What, man? You know why? You know why? But it was for a great reason and a great cause. It was very interesting. It was very fun, very enjoyable. But beyond that, I wasn't able to even gloss over the casualty report from yesterday, so thank y'all for recommending that and letting me look at it live on air, because it's very important to take a look at these things and compare them to what had been going on in the past. But moving on from that, or more so what's been going on today. But it's time for us to move on from casualty reports, and it's time to move on into the casualties, because the Ukrainians don't just, have a casualty report that's idly sitting there. No. They are cooking up the casualties out there in the field like Salt Bay is cooking up steaks and also some allegations. But we've got to move on into what's going on up there. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into our first poll and question segment of the night. We have 2 polls to address, and the first one says, Zelensky announces a mobilization of 500,000 new soldiers in Ukraine to join the war, and what are your thoughts? 66% said he will meet this goal, 17% said unsure, another 13% said this goal will not be met, and 4% said maybe it's time for peace talks. And on this one, I gotta say that 500,000 new soldiers, that is definitely not a small figure. That is a very large amount, but I am confident he will meet the goal. However, I'm not really sure if they're going to be all volunteers, because I think he's going to resort to conscription, at least more aggressively, I think, to get that many people into the military. So it is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think it will be met. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's not a bad sign. Let's see how to word this. Through World War II, really every single war around the world, there's always been the need for more manpower. And it's something that always happens. Even during World War II, with the United States steamrolling both the Japanese and the Nazi Germans wherever we were going up against them, and not really taking high losses, especially compared to the Soviets, or the Chinese for that matter, we still had to have new draft call-ups of more men. And that was just what happened. That's what happened for everyone throughout all wars. So this isn't anything surprising. Now, seeing that they want to call up 500,000 men, that is showing that they are wanting to build the Ukrainian army to be even larger. Because there is no way with the Ukrainian army size that they could have lost enough manpower to require 500,000 men, because that means that the Ukrainian army has most likely been destroyed 1.5 times over completely, and the army wouldn't even exist at this point. So going off that 500,000 conscript number, we know that they're trying to build up the size of the Ukrainian armed forces to be far larger, probably by about an additional 40% at this rate. So going off of that, I would say it's probably showing that the Ukrainians are trying to ramp this up and just crush the Russians through superior numbers on the field, but I don't know how that's going to go, because as y'all know, at the exact same time, the foreign support is a little bit in a tough spot, as everyone has been hearing about and everyone's been talking about, and it's going to be somewhat difficult to equip a lot of these new brigades that are going to be raised, or really new divisions or army corps that are going to be raised out of this. It's going to be very tough to equip them with Western equipment at all, because there's just not going to be enough to go around. A lot of these units are probably going to be equipped with older Soviet vintage weapons, such as the AK-74, which not to spoil anything, but that's actually our first gun review that's going to be put up on this channel, is about the AK-74, and also probably T-72s, T-64s, and main battle tanks like that they may be pulling out of the tank graveyards and refurbishing, so that way they can be used on the front lines. So with that, I would have to say it's not a terribly bad thing, and hopefully they will be able to meet those numbers. Meeting numbers like that is going to be pretty tough, I'm not going to lie. 500,000 men doesn't sound like a lot in an American perspective, or even, for example, a Japanese perspective, just to put two out there, when we're talking about a war for the existence of the nation. But that is 1.3% of Ukraine's total population pre-war, and almost all of those conscripts are going to be men. Just to put that into perspective, it's something right now around the number of 1.3, well, actually, it's less than that, I think. It's like 0.4% of the U.S. population is currently in the U.S. Armed Forces, just to put that into perspective. And the Ukrainians have to conscript nearly 1.3% of the population into the military here within the next few months, most likely. So that's going to be pretty challenging and pretty tough, but in wars like these, this is something that is usually seen. By the end of World War II, I think it was something like 14% of the male population was serving in the British Expeditionary Forces. Something like, at the end of World War II, I think it was something like 24 to 25% of the Soviet Union's male population was serving in the Red Army. So going off of those historical numbers, this isn't anything out of the norm. It's not insane or anything, but it's going to be somewhat difficult to get these numbers. But with that, hope that does address it well. And some people are saying women soldiers are badass. Now, I will not disagree with that at all. But one thing that is true is that from what I understand, the Ukrainians do not conscript females. They only allow them to volunteer. Males do have to be conscripted, however. And I believe it's the same in the Russian Federation as well. But with that, I hope that does address that quite well, at least in my opinion. And let's get on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, Zelensky says, quote unquote, he is confident that the U.S. will not betray Ukraine and will deliver aid. And what are your thoughts? 56% said that's an effective and wise comment. 18% said unsure. 16% said that's not a productive comment. And 10% said it's insignificant and means nothing. And I will say that that certainly does mean something. All words do have meaning behind it. And I have to say I don't agree with the use of the word betray in Zelensky's statement. That was intended to sort of send a message to the United States, and I think that's not working to his advantage. I think Zelensky should take a very humble approach to asking for aid from this point forward, because clearly being aggressive is not working, because right now the aid runs out on the 30th, and there is no aid on the horizon. So to me, I wouldn't use pointed language like that. I would sort of tone it back a little bit and hope that maybe some people have sympathy on Ukraine and that they'll maybe try to pick up some support here and there from people that feel sympathy. But I don't think being too jaded about it is going to have any productive value to it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's a fairly effective comment, but I also have a problem with the word betray, because because you see, it's kind of branding everyone in America. If for some, if the U.S. government is not able to provide support due to internal reasons, it's kind of branding everyone in America as a traitor, whether we supported Ukraine or not. And I think that kind of wording is something a little important. I'm seeing some people say humility will not work. Well, look at the current situation right now. He doesn't really have a lot of humility with statements like that, and that's not working either. So what would work? I would be honest with y'all. I think if I had to word that statement, I would have said something like, the United States has always been our friends, and I'm sure that the aid will continue. I would have said something like that. It's very nice wordage. It's very positive wordage. It makes it seem good that the U.S. supports, and it makes it seem like the Ukrainians in America are friends. And that's something that plays into the public sphere. That's also something that continues to play not only into the public sphere, but maybe even the governmental sphere as well, because it's a bad press look to sit there and betray a country that blindly views America as a friend on the public level. So I would say that the word betray wasn't really well used there. And I also think that as far as Zelensky's pitch goes to the American government, I think it would be important to start shifting from Ukrainians are people and we need to survive, to Ukraine is an inherent strategic advantage for the United States, and Americans need to support Ukraine for American strategic interests, and shift the focus from being entirely on Ukrainians and more so into what Americans want. I know that sounds a little bit selfish, but at the end of the war, the Ukrainians will win as long as they get support, and Zelensky's job is to gain that support for Ukraine. And I think it would be very go ahead.
Honestly, when you use words like betray, and I understand why Zelensky used the word, because he's irritated that he's not getting support for his country, and ultimately that means Ukrainians are going to suffer, the people in general. But he should focus more on the individual suffering of the people to try to gain sympathy from Americans, the ones that don't want to support Ukraine, and also the politicians as well. He should point out the innocent people that are suffering in the war at the hands of Russia. And that would be much, much more effective if he simply took that humble route. Because even if he never gets any more aid from the U.S., he has still gotten about, $100 billion at this point in total aid from the U.S., I think?
Something around that.
It's somewhere around that mark. So even if the aid stops, you don't want to burn that bridge, because later something might turn around. We might start supporting Ukraine again. And if you burn the bridge now, that will pretty much throw that out the window permanently. So, I understand the frustration, but at the same time, he should focus his efforts elsewhere to make sure that he has the best chance possible of getting any aid in the future.
And I'm seeing a lot of people say, yeah, I would feel betrayed too. I mean, sure, it can be looked at as betrayal, and I'm sure the Ukrainians will look at it that way if the U.S. doesn't ever support them again. But we're not trying to talk to Ukraine supporters, because y'all are getting it because y'all support Ukraine. Zelensky has to talk to the people who are on the fence or don't support Ukraine. Those are the people that are the most important to talk to right now and turn to this direction, because they are the ones that are the reason why support is not going to Ukraine at the moment, and there's currently a holdup. You have to try and persuade those people, and trying to use wordage where you say, y'all are betraying us, it's only going to make them dig in deeper and ensure that no support gets there. It's better to try and talk to these people nicely and try and encourage them to change their minds, because that has a hope of working. Saying that they're betraying you already has no hope of working. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, but it is betrayal. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But at the same time, Ukraine is trying to survive. It's not about, what's the truth, as far as a statement. Do we want to poke someone's eye, when they deserve it and say you're betraying us? Or do you want to persuade them to do what's right? Maybe talk about that after the war 5 or 10 years later. That'd probably be a lot better thing to do, because Ukraine will survive that way. Ukraine may not survive, if the U.S. is continued to having issues with support. That's what I would say. Because, and I'm seeing many good comments here. Let's see. Floss Tycoon, those people will be forced to fight Russia themselves if Ukraine falls. Yeah, they will. And it may be possible. It may be that the war extends into NATO in 10, 20 years' time. But the big thing is that they're not looking at that right now. And we have to argue, not argue, but more so persuade in their logic. And I think a good way to sell this war to the public that either is indifferent to the war or is even against the war is to sell it to them. Tell them this is within American interests. It's creating American jobs. 90% of the support's spent inside the United States. It's also going to help out the United States in putting down the Russians. It's putting America at the forefront in our interests around the world and making sure that we're able to put our rivals down that we don't like, because the United States clearly does not like the Russians or the Chinese. I think everyone can agree with that. They're probably the two inherent evils of the world. And supporting Ukraine will further putting the Russians even further down on the totem pole along with the Chinese. It needs to be sold in a way to that part of the public that it will like. And it also has to be sold to the other part of the public the way they'll like it, the way a lot of y'all like it. About these people are real people inside of Ukraine. They're people that have lives and families just like all of y'all. And there's a reason to support these people, because there's no reason that they should be subjugated by a angry and hateful nation such as the Russians, who wants to continue to put them down for time to come. You have to sell this to the right. You have to sell this the right way to different groups. One sales pitch isn't going to work for everyone. It has to be a different sales pitch. And that's Zelensky's job, is to sell this war to everyone as much as possible.
And also, I hate to have to say it, but Zelensky might have to appeal to individual parties in America. I think right now the only way to break the partisanship of supporting Ukraine is for Zelensky himself to literally appeal to both parties directly by stating them by name and saying that, you know, it's not about the political parties, it's about the innocent people that can get killed by Russian soldiers if they continue plowing through Ukraine and taking land. I don't think you're going to come across anybody, even people that are in the political parties that don't like Ukraine, that's going to endorse the killing of innocent women and children. That's something that nobody supports. And I think if you appeal to that, I know some people out there are saying that these people don't have empathy. I think everybody to some degree has guilt and empathy, and I think they can appeal to that if they show people exactly how bad the suffering is. People might change their minds then.
And also, I have to say this because a lot of people are saying, you know, and I see some people, and this is a very bad pitch to start off with, or a mindset to start off with. Seeing some people saying the certain kind of people who aren't supporting Ukraine aren't the ones who can be persuaded. I would disagree with that greatly. Everyone can be persuaded. I don't know if y'all can tell, but honestly, for 6 days a week, we are giving y'all a sales pitch on why Ukraine is worthwhile supporting for that Sunday fundraiser every single weekend. And every single Sunday, we see everyone come together. There's no such thing on this channel as one group of people hating Ukraine and another group liking them. I've seen literally everyone from every single walk of life once we've gotten to know y'all. People who would be far right, far left, people who are in every single direction come together to support fundraisers that we run for Ukraine every Sunday. I've seen that, and that's because this channel doesn't try and just select one group to go for and really target as, you know, y'all are going to be our chosen ones. We just say anyone who supports Ukraine, and you're welcome here. And that's a great way to do things, and that's a great way to make sure that support for Ukraine continues. Because once you start to polarize this thing and you make it to where it's a political topic, which so many people try and do, and they try and do it because they're greater than thou and they're greater than the other group of people that they don't like, or they just do it just because it's human, it's their nature, I guess, which is a really sick way to look at it. But they end up cutting out half of people who would have supported Ukraine because they're just looked at as the enemy anyways. That's not a good way to go about things. And we've never gone about it this way on this channel. That's why this channel has ended up fundraising more for Ukraine than really any other channel out there on YouTube. And that's the way that wars are won. It's won through coalitions. It's not won through division. As Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And you cannot divide support for Ukraine into the people who like Ukraine and the people you just want to throw into the camp that hate Ukraine, even though they may not. Everyone loves Ukraine, and that's the way the mindset should be to make sure the support continues. And the sales pitch ought to go and target each group specifically. And I know a lot of people are like, it's not a business, it's not a company, it shouldn't be a sales pitch. People's lives are on the line. I hate to tell you, while that may be true, some people don't look at it that way, and you have to sell it to them the right way, the way they want to hear it. Otherwise, they're not going to want to hear it at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. You know, and I see some people, you know, I see someone say they are invested, you know, let's see. And also, thank you for saying that, Kyle Leeson, because I was looking at that. I thought you were saying something like, you know, but there are real lives over there, and I'm not disagreeing with that at all. That's the way we look at it as well. But I gotta say, it's great to know that we don't ostracize because, you know, we don't allow political discussion in here, but we've gotten to know a lot of y'all behind the scenes over Twitter DMs and stuff like that. And all of y'all have political opinions, and we've literally seen every different kind of political opinion there is. You will not see that on any other channel. And I think that's what should be the exemplar for Ukraine support. You shouldn't try and divide people going, oh, they have this political belief domestically, therefore they cannot support Ukraine. Terrible way to look at it, because what if they do support Ukraine? You don't know. Like, you know, just because one person is in one political group and one person is in the other, that does not mean that they hate Ukraine or love Ukraine just because of that. I know people on both sides that either love or hate Ukraine, and it really has nothing to do with their political affiliations whatsoever. That's why it's important to not divide people that way, because you're going to end up killing Ukrainian support. The same thing happened in the civil rights movement in the late 1960s. It fell apart because people inside of the civil rights movement started to try and divide it based on the people who wanted to do more or people who wanted to kind of keep it a little status quo and do it slower. It ended up ripping the entire thing apart instead of just looking at everyone as having the same cause and objective. That's what's starting to happen here, and that's not a smart move to make. That will end up killing Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll to address, so we are moving into our super chat questions, and we have a ton of really good ones. And the first one of the night goes to Steve Watkins at work, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Steve Watkins, for that support. And also, it's good to know you're still at work. I hope you get a break sometime. And Steve says the Russians should stick to invading their neighbors, and they are much better at that than making cars. And that's just how bad that car really is. I'm telling you, that's low, because they're losing this war so bad that the car is even lower. I'm telling you, that's no respect.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Steve. Steve Watkins at work for making this channel possible. And I thank you so much for the support as well. And also, I think they should stick to possibly trying to invade their neighbors, because car design is worse. Like, we thought the war was bad. That car is even worse. I'm not going to lie. And so, thank you for the support and throwing that in, because that is a good, appropriate roast of the car. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making it possible, because without folks like you who supported this channel this entire time, we wouldn't be able to be here. Well, we would be here. I mean, you know, support or not, we will try to be here as long as possible. But support like that continues to make this channel possible. And I got to thank you so much once again for doing that, and so much once again for helping this channel out. Now, really quickly, before we move on to the next one, not to rabbit hole on this too long, but I saw a channel viewer who's been here for a really long time, may even be a legend. They said, you know, you can't blame both parties in America for what's happening. I can, and I'll tell you why. One party supports Ukraine without question. The other one supports Ukraine, but it's with question. You know, I don't think anyone can really deny that at this point. There's a decent contingent of a certain party that doesn't support Ukraine. But what you're doing is you're taking the other one party who supports Ukraine almost without question is taking about the other 30% of that other party that does support Ukraine, and they're just throwing them out of the loop, just throwing them off the wagon. That's terrible to do. It's not smart. It's just not. You don't do that in the middle of a war. Like, for example, in World War II, when FDR had to bring the United States into war, he asked for the approval of Congress, and pretty much every domestic issue went on hold until the war was over. Very few domestic issues were brought up during the war, and they were the ones who would be passed unanimously. That was it. In Britain, during World War I, the United Kingdom's government created a coalition in between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and they did not cover any domestic issues until the war was over. That's what you do. You do not sit there and make domestic issues divide the country as far as war support goes. It's suicidal. It is literally the stupidest thing you could ever do. And trying to do that here, which I am starting to see, because, and I'll tell you this, the one party that clearly supports Ukraine without question is going out of its way to try and demonize anyone who may support Ukraine that is a part of the other party. That's not a great way to do it, because you're killing around 30% of all of the support that Ukraine gets, and you're throwing them off the wagon. That's how you kill support. That's how you go and take that 30%, and they were Ukraine supporters. Now you're making them neutral. Later on, they're going to become incredibly hostile. That's not smart. And that's something that I think is very important to remember. You're not trying to ostracize people when the survival of a nation is on the line. You want everyone to be together, and you want everyone to be supporting the war, without question. You never want to spit in anyone's face, because the person you spit in the face of today may be the person that makes sure you're defeated tomorrow. Never do that. And so with that, hope that does address that well. You know, and of course I have to say this, while I'm covering that as best as possible while trying not to get into politics, because we're trying to address both sides fairly, it's something that everyone keeps on covering, and I'm trying to make sure that we address that as best we can, because I think everyone needs to know, regardless whatever affiliation y'all have, and I know every single one of y'all has a different affiliation. This is the only channel that covers the war where I've seen both sides represented fairly equally. There's no reason to spit in the face of someone else who supports Ukraine just because you disagree with them on other topics. If you truly think that this war is that important and there are so many lives on the line, anyone who is an ally of Ukraine is an ally of yours. It's never smart to go and try and crap on the people who you have to pretty much fight alongside with to make sure that Ukraine will live to see another day. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to James Hughes, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you, James, as well, for that support. He says, what and how much military equipment does Ukraine need from the United States to kick Putin out of Ukraine? And the House will not give a blank check, but $30 billion for 2024, question mark.
And I thank you so much for the support, James, and I would have to be honest with you. There's really no clear number that anyone could ever give because we never know how expensive a war will be. And there's really no good way to account for that. Realistically, wars run the best on practically unlimited budgets. So however much money you can give them, they will be better off because spending is usually where a war can be won. Just in spending alone.
that is top notch right there. That is like words of wisdom. The best wars are fought with an unlimited budget. That goes true for anything. Like the best anything goes good with an unlimited budget.
Exactly. I mean, you can get the best out of anything with an unlimited budget. Look at the United States military. It is literally the example of really the only example in the world right now that has an unlimited budget, and it is the strongest in every category. By far, and that's not to mitigate the strength of our allies in Europe, because they also have some pretty decent militaries as well. But when paired to the United States' unlimited budget, the United States is able to surpass many European nations and really all of our rivals as well at the same time, just because we have the spending power to do so. And that gives us an edge in war that nobody else can top right now. No one gets close. And that's the truth. And so if you want to fight this war in Ukraine and you want the Ukrainians to win, you practically just give them a blank check to do whatever they want and spend however much they need to try and win the war. That would be the reality of it. But the world does not work that way. You just don't give people blank checks. You would actually have to give them a specified number. I would say that a realistic number with the intensity of this war would probably be close to $80 to $90 billion annually. That would probably be enough. And then, the European Union would have to chip in probably another $40 to $50 billion on top of that. Those two amounts of support combined would probably be enough to get the Ukrainians through this war incredibly comfortably. At that point, they would probably be stomping the Russians into the floor about weekly. So that's what I would say. But once again, that's a very ambiguous kind of a figure because we just don't know. Like, who's to say that the Russians don't get support from the Chinese and now they have a brand new influx of decent equipment? Now the war has become a lot more expensive. Now we're in a spending war with the Chinese to try and outdo them. So then the numbers could start to rapidly inflate over time. Or the Russians could start to get even worse off and it takes even less money. We just never really know. But I would say probably around 80 to 90 billion a year probably would be a fairly decent number for Ukraine. And also, I see Paddington saying Ukrainians are running through about $2 billion a month. When you put that into perspective, that's actually fairly economical. I mean, that's about $24 billion a year. Not much, but you have to give them a lot more. You can't just give them enough. You've got to give them a lot more. And I'm not talking about raw money, just sending them billions of dollars. I'm talking about sending them billions of dollars worth of stuff. Ammunition, artillery shells, because a lot of that money is going to go back into the U.S. economy, and it will end up supporting Ukraine as well. But there also has to be some actual raw cash that's sent to Ukraine, because there are some things that they may have to buy on their own, and they may also have to put the entire military on payroll. We may have to put the Ukrainian armed forces on payroll. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for the support, James, and helping this channel to keep on running, and helping us to answer the questions that count. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and thank you to everyone who's supporting the channel, because once again, like we've been saying all the way through this month, we know it is Christmas, and we know that many of y'all are stretched. And I have to be honest with y'all, we are stretched, so I completely understand that support is tough to give to fundraisers to this channel, but I think every single one of y'all, nevertheless, who does support, knowing that in the background, because it means so much more that y'all found a way or an ability or a kindness to support the channel even during this time of the year. And so thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the final question, and then we're going to be getting right back into the news.
And also, by the way, I said great questions, foals. And that was a typo. I meant to say folks, but it came out foals, and someone thought I called them fools. So didn't call you that. That was supposed to be folks, just to clear that one up. An unfortunate typo, I must say. But anyways, the last super chat of the segment goes to Kyle Leeson, who puts in a $33 donation. And huge shout out to you, Kyle, and thank you very much for that support. And he says, Slava Ukraine, and stay awesome, and drink water. I'm drinking it right now, actually. I've got a whole bottle over here. I'm lucky me. It said, tackle a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Kyle Leeson, channel legend, and thank you for helping this channel to keep rolling. I will make sure to try and stay awesome, although, we usually fall below that mark often, but I will try and stay awesome, and I will try and drink water. Water is so important, y'all, and it's something that we really needed, because yesterday we went go-kart racing with friends, and I would tell, y'all wouldn't believe it, how physically strenuous go-kart racing is. I was blown away with how strenuous that was, and I got a lot more respect for NASCAR drivers and F1 drivers knowing that they're going like 200 miles an hour and they're dealing with like 6 Gs. I don't know what the go-karts
Matt won. Matt won, of course. He had to win.
Oh yeah, Matt won. I think the closest I ever came was 3rd place, which wasn't bad because somehow I ended up being one of the best of the week's scores. I was in like the top 12. I was literally number 12, so I was like hardly on the leaderboard, but still got up to the top 12. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, water is just like, it's something you need, because even doing the little go-kart racing, I was hardly sweating, but I think every one of us came out of that and we were all dehydrated to beyond belief. But it was incredibly fun. Maddie, have they been here tonight?
I don't think tonight.
Oh man. But anyways, it's very important to drink water, Kyle, and I thank you so much for giving us that little tip, because I never drink water during streams. I drink water like before the stream a little bit and then after the stream a lot, but nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And you know what we're about to do. We're about to take that question from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the question from the live chat is going to go to Duncan VR, longtime channel legend. He says, does Russia have the army and equipment to start a second war with another country?
Absolutely not. It's taking all of the Russians' manpower and abilities right now to fight inside of Ukraine, and while I never give a definite statement to anything, they would be hard-pressed to invade a nation that you're probably talking about, Duncan VR. And what I'm thinking, if I'm correct, Duncan, is that you're talking about a country like Finland or the Baltics or maybe Poland. It's going to be impossible for them to do that because they have NATO backing, and they wouldn't have enough armed forces at the moment to be able to fight the entirety of NATO if they tried to invade one of those countries. However, Kazakhstan is possible, because Kazakhstan does have a smaller military that is less equipped and less prepared. So going off of that, maybe, a little possible to do that. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, Kyle Easton. And thank you, Duncan, for asking a very good question. But with that, it's time for us to move on back into the news, into the area of the northeast near Petrovichavane, where we got to see a Ukrainian soldier firing an AT-4 in a snow-covered trench. This picture was wild because it's insane. I never thought there would be a snow-covered landscape like this in Ukraine. But it literally looks like one of those trenches on Hoth in Star Wars. Not to try and relate a war to a movie because, not really comparable, but still very similar scene.
It looks like something that AI might have generated and created. It's so, perfect looking.
It's so perfect, I have to say. But with
even the shading and the light is just right, Blood.
Yes, kind of like our pictures, which are on Patreon. But moving on from that and into Yechidne, we got to see that the Russian assault was repelled. Now, I know the video says it's spicy, but I did review this one, and as long as I don't show y'all anything past the 1 minute mark, it's not spicy. Here's the clip. Well, you see our Russians here. Oh no! Oh, it looks like he won't be coming home this Christmas. But we can see them now moving on along. And the first APC has already been destroyed. Boom, chugga chugga. And we now see an FPV drone coming on in, nice and heavy. Get it, baby? What are the charges? Eating a meal? A succulent Russian meal? Why, how dare you, sir? Get your hands off my ladder! But anyways, we can see the Russian tank burning on fire. We can also see a couple of APCs as well. And we now see them dropping a thermobaric grenade into the hatch of this BMP, which blew up on the rear compartment. And I got
they took the pixels with them too.
Man, that thing was eating pixels. But anyways,
it's like the whole initial fireball got carried away with pixels.
Yes, it's quiet. And I have to make sure to pause that video at just the right moment, because if we don't, we are in bad business. I'm gonna have to stop it right there, but y'all can see that this little assault on Yechidne failed completely and ended up taking some fairly high losses. But still, really nice to see they were able to knock it out, and it is showing the Ukrainian defensive lines in this area are still holding, and quite strongly. Moving on from that and into the area of Svatove, we also got to see that the Russians lost a counter battery and ended up showing the proof that they had, because their D-30 was shredded.
Все, что осталось от моей заруби. Ай-яй-яй-яй-яй.
Ay, caramba. But anyways.
Ой-яй-яй-яй-яй, блядь. Сейчас, конечно, это все весело и интересно.
This guy sounds like he's getting a little turned on by this whole situation.
How are you getting that out? It's like, I'm like,
Hey,
oh,
hey.
oh, ay.
Мало нахуй. Дыра, блядь. Да, здесь, блядь, тоже все нахуй захватило.
Ay.
Че ты говоришь, сюда пошла?
Вот, видишь, тот край первый рухнул,
Да.
она упала на орудие, его придавила, и вот
Ну
эта
вот-
сторона не рухнула.
Why in the world does that guy sound like Russian Kermit? He's back there. Oh, the last thing you got here and slammed by a couple of rounds. It's like,
Да,
what the
да.
hell
Хорошо, не
are you?
придавила вас
Да.
ничего, блин. А этот столб только недавно
А здесь
упал,
не было
он стоял.
здесь не было никого, здесь я один был. Вот я как раз сюда, где столб лежит, я сюда и уебало меня нахуй.
It was destroyed quite thoroughly.
Да, за орудие, бля.
Ебало зачет. Ладно, живы.
That's the end of that clip. But the counter battery was very successful. Moving on from that and towards the Krynky Forest, we got some documentation today that made me kind of pleased. Many of y'all know about the T-90M. It's the most advanced Russian main battle tank out there on the field. And as many of y'all know, the T-90M gets destroyed a pretty good bit, although it is the most advanced they have out there. I'd also like to note that this man right here, he's got the full AK-40, well, not AK-47, AK-74, with the bakelite magazine, the wooden stock with the cleaning kit inside, and also the front foregrip. The front foregrip, we'll call it that, made out of wood furniture. But his picture is very special. Because one, he doesn't have a helmet. Two, his plate carrier looks like Gobbo. And three, that's a T-90M breakthrough back there that got blown up that was never documented, and we got documentation of it today. Showing that the T-90M ain't nothing and gets blown up all the time, just like every other T-72 series main battle tank. But moving on from that, that's all the news we got in the Krynky Forest today. And we're going to be moving down to Bakhmut, because we got a little video showing what Chasiv looks like near Bakhmut. Here's the clip.
Часів Яр, другий, або як його в народі називають, канал. Приїхав доставити продуктові набори, корм для тварин. Ну, якщо вдасться знайти людей, забрати когось на евакуацію з Богом. Туди, куди я привозив гуманітарку, там вже зачинено. Сподіваюся, що люди вчасно виїхали, тому що тут взагалі немає цього району.
Ooh. See him showing the remainder of Chasiv, fairly destroyed.
Калинівка, сразу за Часів Яром.
Это мои питомцы.
Это сколько у вас их?
Oh, there's a little puppy.
Ай,
And an
клас.
old lady who's still living in Chasiv
У
Yar.
вас тут ціла родина. Це наші літають?
Летают и наши, и чужие.
І наші, і чужі.
Так что тут
Все.
самолет летал чужой.
Чужой, да? Песик. Богданівка, що там?
Dude, the dog even got an aid package.
Ви ж теж не
It sounded like,
зачитуєтесь, я вас
I would
прошу.
like to thank the Great Charities Foundation for the donation of food.
Веня, ну ти
Oh, look, he's got a little sweater.
красень.
Oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that something?
That dog's living good.
Класний.
Man, what the dog doing with a
Такий
sweater?
класний. Ось там Богданівка, ось вона. 16 грудня ось така поїздка. Як бачите, тут ще залишаються цивільні люди, місцеві, які потребують на допомогу.
That's the end of the clip right there, but I gotta say, really interesting to see that the town of Chasiv Yar has ended up taking some pretty decent damage that we've never seen before during the Battle of Bakhmut and the months after. We know that Chasiv Yar is close to the front lines, but usually we hadn't heard that it was taking any kind of heavy artillery fire, but it does appear in those clips it was. We also saw that the Russians appear to have made a front wide, possibly, and let's see if it updates again, because it's like a little on and off whether it wants to. Let me refresh the page and see if it will. But it appears that the Russians were able to make some advances forward over the past few days in the Bakhmut area, but it appears to only be about 100 meters at most in some areas. Hopefully the Ukrainians are able to stabilize the situation and hold the front lines here. Moving on from that and into the area of Orlivka, we also get to see that some systems were destroyed. Electronic warfare systems were destroyed near Orlivka by the Rarog. Raggy. But anyways, we can see the drone flying on into the first spot, which appears to be a somewhat destroyed house. And they're about to destroy it a little somewhat more. Oh, wow, that was actually a lot more than I
Rah,
thought.
rah, Raggy! Raise the roof!
Like, Zoink Scoop, I think we have an opening in the roof. Rah, rah, Raggy! Roof's blown out! And John and Nia said, Bakelite, old stuff, sturdy stuff. And a lot of people are like, isn't Bakelite like some kind of fiberglass? Yeah, it kind of is. It's just like an improved plastic magazine made out of plastic fibers or something like that. It really is just fiberglass, but it's a very interesting magazine because of its unique color, and also because it's just rare to get in the collector's world. They're actually fairly expensive magazines these days. And so whenever I see one, I'm like, oh, Bakelite, because I know how rare they are in the U.S. But we can see the drones.
Like, Zoink Scoob, there's a standing building.
Level it, Raggy. Level it.
That's blasted. And we can see that one getting hit. Oh, we got the tire pile back there, too. You know, when these things catch on fire, the Russians are just inhaling the straight-up toxic fumes.
I've heard rumors that they walk up to it and huff it.
Man, just to get a little bit of a high. Aw, man.
Just a little temporary high. Like the hot dog people.
Oh, man. You know, it's always the hot dog people. But with that's the end of that clip right there. Wonderful to see that they were able to knock out a decent amount of Russian equipment in that area. Moving on into Avdiivka. Avdiivka has been a very active part of the front line over the past 48 hours. We have seen that during this time, the Russians have not made any ground at all. Literally no changes to the front line whatsoever. We did get to see that a Russian ATGM, it appears to be a concourse, was destroyed near the Stepove area by the Magura. Ooh, looks like we got a little Sparky going on there. Easy, Sparky. Cool it, Sparky. Ideally ungabaki, ideally grust. You know, I'll have to tell you where I got that from in a minute, but we can see the HGM was completely wiped out, knocked out, destroyed, beat up, spun around a little bit. You know, they knocked on it. Oh, and it was take two.
Oh,
I didn't even know that. That was a bit of a shock. Dude, I saw the drone come flying in like a spastic on crack, and I was like, oh man, that's like it's take two. But there we go. We got the slaw at the end. Y'all know it's this war, but we like slaw. And with that, that's the end of the clip. Nice to see they were able to knock out another ATGM. We also got a satellite view of the Avdiivka coke plant, and it does appear that the Russians have been trying to destroy the coke plant as best as they possibly can. The Russians do control the slag heap over here on the other side of the railroad berm, and it seems as though the Ukrainians must be holding the coke plant exceedingly well, because the amount of artillery damage that appears to have been caused to most of the buildings within the coke plant has been so severe that some parts of the coke plant appear to have been completely destroyed at this point. It is a good sign, though. It is showing that the Ukrainian defense is working incredibly well in this area, considering that the Russians have brought so much firepower onto it and still have not taken it. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also got to see that a javelin was fired at a Russian vehicle somewhere on the southeastern end of Avdiivka. Oh, and there it goes. Oh, get him.
Yeah!
Bap.
Ракет!
And they got it, baby. And so we're all happy to see it. We all know that. And another Russian vehicle destroyed. We don't know what kind, though. Moving on from that, we did also get to see a Ukrainian soldier suppressing Russians with an M240B. He's just having a fun time with it. That's the end of that clip. I just wanted to show you that. I thought it was a cool video. Maybe we'll get a review one of those someday. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see Ukrainian forces lying in wait. We also got to take a good, interesting look at some of their equipment. First off, we got to see some of the most interesting CZ Brens, which are becoming very popular as the war keeps going. We also got to see a really neat MG5, which is very rare to see and really cool to notice. We can also see that all of them are wearing a PAS GT style helmet, and all of them, Matthew, have the exact same ballistic vest that I have. You know, same color.
They sure do.
Everything.
That's kind of weird. I don't know if they got the same like type from the same place you got yours.
I wonder, and they also look to be like the 10x12s. So very interesting to note that, because that is literally exactly the same as the plates we got to show y'all as a review of sorts. And also, we were planning on, if the gun reviews become so popular that we are able to kind of cover this, we were actually planning on testing these plates on a video, but I can't guarantee that in the future because it really depends on if we're able to, cover that kind of an expense, because they, were not the cheapest thing to get a hold of. But I would like to test them and show y'all what a level 4 plate can do. But still, pretty interesting to note that it's the exact same kind of plate carrier and probably plate inside of it that I have, because it looks to be a solid plate, not one of the little flexible ones like a level 3 or level 3A or something like that. It appears to possibly be a solid plate, but still interesting to see their equipment, and also interesting to see what kind of soldiers are being used in the area of Avdiivka at the moment. Moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, we also got to see near Prvomaiske a Bodana SPG firing on the Russians. And 420 said, well, post a gun review down. We're editing it, man. Whoa, what do you think, Jack? You think we're just not posting it? You think we're just, playing around? Why would you think that, Jack? But anyways, when you see the Bodana firing right there, really neat. And we're now going to be moving a little bit further on down the lines and towards Marinka, where we got to see a Russian T-72B3 getting destroyed by the 110th Mechanized Brigade. When you see them drop the grenade right into the open commander's hatch, the bada boom. The explosion wrecks the tank, and we can now see the ammunition burning up. Or as they say, brewing up. Oh, you see the tank smoking? And not to plug this, but if y'all want to see the photo shoot of the one gun that we've done a photo shoot on so far, you can get on our Patreon. We never have a link for it on the stream. We do have it on our videos, and we posted the photo shoot on there. For the P90 specifically. We have not done the AK-74 yet. We plan on doing that probably tomorrow. At least I plan on doing it tomorrow. But we can see the T-72B3 continuing to burn right there. Once again showing that the 110th Brigade has done a damn good job. Moving on from that clip and on to our next one beyond that, we also got to see that the Ukrainians fired an ATGM at the Russians. Oh yeah, get that epic music going, baby. But we can see them firing the javelin right there. And there it goes off into the sunset. Or more so the night sky. And we see it smack into the Russian tank right there as he looks back. And he did in fact hit it. We see him firing another ATGM, and we can also see the tank that was hit in the thermals. Oh, nice. Very nice. Dang. A little bit of an explosion right there. And Tommy Two Tokes, he's like, what happened? And oh, it was a hacking attack. We survived it, though, luckily. The Lee Spring Army still stands strong. Moving on from that and down into the area of Volodar, we also get to see the 72nd Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine conduct a turret toss on those Ruski Soldat. There's our Ruski Soldat. You can see 2 tanks, and we're about to see 2 poofs. Really just one, I think, but here comes the first one. And it slams right to the side of the turret, setting off a fire on the front upper glacis. Probably roasting the... Oh, it did roast the tank, and it looks like there may have been a turret toss already. Beautiful. Oh yeah, there was a turret toss. We can see the remnants of the turret burning right there, and an open and exposed turret ring. Burn, baby, burn. Moving on from that, and into our next clip, a little bit further down on the southern front, we also got to see that near Robotine, a Russian BMD was destroyed.
Here at the Home Depot, we give you all the tools and equipment that you need to make sure to get your home running. You want to see some extra steel on your sides of your house? Why don't you just knock out this Russian BMD here to give you some of that beloved steel that everybody loves. Watch the gunner spin the turret around in wild abandon, trying to figure out where in the world he should fire. Watch the Russians as they run down the street, trying to make sure to pick up that steel for you and deliver it as fast as possible. Home Depot does have same-day shipping. Watch as we strip this thing bare like some kind of a crackhead on the side of the interstate stripping your car down to the cinder blocks and get that steel right to you. Watch as this BMD explodes, making sure to tenderize your steel for the ultimate building experience. We can see right there the BMD continuing to roast quite nicely like a can of Bush's baked beans. Make sure to pick up yours at a local Walmart and get yourself a nice fire cooking, because these beans be bussin'.
Orcs roasting on an open fire. Orcs nipping at your toes. I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you. But we can see the BMD continuing to burn.
Oh,
get
no
'em.
fireworks. And a little bit of a heating element or something over there on the right side of the screen. I don't know what that little piece was over there.
Oh, it was nothing. Oh, it was nothing. It
It
looks
was a
like,
little det cord.
yeah, it's just, a little bit of stuff. That's the end of the clip. But, of course, another Russian attack failed, and we could get that quite clearly from the footage. We're now going to be moving on out of the southern front and on up into Kyiv, because it's time for the speech, or as I call it, the peach, from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, without further ado, y'all know it. Here's the peach.
Oh, he's got a high-tech speech.
Man, it's all modern in here. Woo! All right, here we go. That's it.
Для відкриття Дія саміту запрошуємо на сцену президента України
What the hell is
Володимира
this?
Зеленського.
Dude, you got like a video game intro. What the hell is this? I'm actually confused.
Слава Україні! Вітаю всіх і радий тому, що дійсно під кінець року ми з вами у таких світлих умовах. І це дуже важливо, можемо говорити зовсім не про блекаут, а про абсолютно протилежну тему, про наші державні цифрові сервіси, які дійсно, які працюють, які розвиваються, які доводять максимально очевидно, на що здатна Україна і на що здатні всі ми, українці. Наша стійкість, стійкість нашої держави, нашого суспільства – це глобально значимий приклад. Приклад того, що коли люди працюють реально заради своєї держави, результат він завжди надзвичайний. Зокрема, ми зараз в умовах повномасштабної війни проти цієї навали і захищаємо Україну, захищаючи її щоденно, забезпечуємо експорт нашої дії, нашої архітектури цифрових сервісів до інших країн. І це, безумовно, це успіх. І це дійсно дуже потужно. І не так багато держав у світі зараз здатні експортувати свої власні цифрові рішення, які мають значення для цілого суспільства. Дія – це справді невід'ємна частина нашого життя, суспільний інструмент і не просто набір певних цифрових державних послуг в смартфоні чи на порталі. Сенс більший. Дія – це інструмент, який допомагає людині. Допомагає людині поставити державу собі в підпорядкування конкретному громадянину. Мінус чиновники, мінус бюрократія, мінус будь-який дискомфорт. Плюс є плюси. І вони важливі. Плюс користь, дуже конкретна користь для людини. Я хочу зараз за це подякувати усій команді нашої держави, яка працює для дії. Хлопці, дівчата, дійсно, ви всі молодці. І я пишаюся вами, пишаюся цим результатом. Ми всі в Україні маємо повне право пишатися нашою дією. Давайте підтримуємо команду дії. Всю команду вітаю. Михайло, вітаю, і вітаю наших користувачів.
20 мільйонів
громадян. Це дійсно потужний результат. Що ж, 4 роки дії, із них майже 2 роки – це правильно було озвучено на початку нашої зустрічі. Повномасштабна війна. Дія витримала. І дія зростає, дія стане ще сильніше. Сьогодні я хочу представити кілька найважливіших підсумків та нових можливостей дії. Зараз дія – це вже 14 цифрових документів в смартфоні та понад 130 онлайн-сервісів. Від першого у світі цифрового паспорту до будівельних послуг та всеукраїнських опитувань. Зараз у нас вже, напевно, є люди, які навіть і не пам'ятають, а як це було раніше, а як це було жити без дії. І держава як сервіс – це логічний розвиток усіх державних систем в світі. У час цієї війни цифрові сервіси довели не просто свою надійність, а те, що державний сервіс за будь-яких умов може залишитись людиноцентричним. Зараз у дії працюють послуги для внутрішніх переселенців, програми «Є-оселя», програма «Є-відновлення», купівля військових облігацій та програма «Є-ворог», які дозволяють кожному допомогти силам оборони та безпеки України. Допомога по безробіттю, повернення вкладів, витяги з державних реєстрів і навіть сервіс шерінгу авто, де б людина, де б вона не знаходилась, держава з нею поруч. Кожен з понад 130 онлайн-сервісів у дії означає, що прибрано понад 130 можливостей взяти хабаря. І цей позитивний ефект вимірюється в мільярдах. Дійсно, мільярдах, які українці зберегли для себе і які наше суспільство змогло зробити додатково завдяки цифровізації. І, звичайно, у мирний час це, зрозуміло, буде ще більше. Дія стане одним із сервісів-провайдерів нашої відбудови України. Ще у березні 2022 року запущено першу цифрову послугу відбудови, і вже більш ніж 500 000 українців подали повідомлення про пошкоджене майно. Дійсно, колосальний обсяг. Увесь масштаб відбудови буде більший. Дія забезпечує швидкий, комфортний і чесний формат подачі заявки на компенсацію зруйнованого майна. Приміром, будинку чи квартири та отримання компенсації, і це вже працює. Вже цьогоріч майже 1 мільярд гривень буде виплачено сім'ям на відновлення пошкодженого війною майна. Звичайно, це поки що тільки початок. Але це робочий старт системи. Разом з підтримкою партнерів, разом з можливостями нашої країни ми забезпечимо загальноукраїнський результат. Другий етап програми є відновлення. Це вже відновлення майна, яке було зруйновано. Усе починається із заявки, завершується формуванням сертифікату, житлового сертифікату. І зараз його середній розмір 2 мільйони гривень. І ось це послуга, яку ми зараз запускаємо, обмін сертифіката в дії на житло. Тепер це працюватиме онлайн. Цей тиждень він стартовий, і далі послуга буде масштабуватися. Інша революційна послуга – те, що вже зараз звільняє від бюрократії багатьох наших громадян, мільйони людей. Сьогодні опівночі запрацює онлайн-послуга купівлі-продажу машин в дії. І я вас з цим вітаю. І всього лише за 15 хвилин можна буде купити чи продати авто через смартфон і отримати новий техпаспорт та номери поштою. Сьогодні урядовці представлять все це ще в деталях. І хоч комусь може здаватися, що послуги в дії звучать трохи буденно через 4 роки роботи сервісу, але те, що ми в Україні і те, що ми все це робимо навіть зараз у час такої війни, говорить усьому світу про нас. Абсолютно чіткі речі. Ми можемо значно більше, ніж багато усіх в світі, більш ніж від нас очікують. Ми українці, і коли ми впевнені в собі, коли ми працюємо заради своїх суспільних інтересів, заради своєї держави, ми досягаємо результату, який дає приклад іншим в світі, людям, країнам, лідерам, суспільствам. Ми віримо у власні сили, ми захищаємо свою державу, працюємо заради своєї держави, діємо. І це найголовніше, що ми діємо щодня, щодоби, щохвилини заради України. Слава Україні! Дякую.
Героям слава. Hello?
Hello?
Oh, hello there. Gherom slava, baby. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And with that, y'all know what's up. We're about to be moving on into part 2 of the stream. We're about to be moving on into the fun part. The part where we get to talk to all y'all. And, of course, it's going to be pretty fun, I do have to say. So, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so moving on to our final question and poll segment, we have 2 more polls to address, and that's right, we have 2 more. The first one says, how should Zelensky try to regain aid for his country to continue fighting this war? 51% said appeal to both U.S. political parties, 26% said sell Ukraine as an economic investment, 13% said keep the current strategy, and 10% said unsure. On this one, like I said earlier, I think the way to go is to appeal to both U.S. political parties and put an emphasis on the human suffering in Ukraine and not an emphasis on, being a victim or anything like that. Because even though Ukraine may have a solid argument for that, that is not the smartest way to go. And they should probably hold back for now and wait until later until they know a little bit more about what's actually going to happen with the aid. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the Ukrainians probably should sell it as a combination of American strategic interests and also American business interests. I think those two would probably be the best way to pitch the support for Ukraine to the somewhat reluctant or skeptical public, because those groups think differently than most of y'all here right now. And a lot of them don't view it as a humanitarian thing. They view it more so as a strategic thing. And I think that it's very important to sell something right to the right kind of people. A car salesman cannot sell a sports car to a soccer mom who has to get her kids to school every morning. You can't sell her a Porsche. You need to sell her the right kind of car. So you go and get her the SUV or the minivan that your company sells. That's what you do. So instead of trying to sell the same package to every customer, you need to sell a different package to each one. And I think those 2 ways would be a great way to package that and sell the war to Ukraine to the rest of the American public that may be neutral or actually against the war. You've got to make sure that you do it the right way. And on top of that, you also have to make sure that your messaging is the right way. You have to make sure that everything lines up. And of course, I can't get into that because, sometimes messaging, you actually have to try and pull on the domestic political strings of, people who are watching. And we're not getting into that because we don't do politics here. I'm just saying that you have to make sure to sell it the right way to the right kind of folks. Otherwise, you might not succeed. Well, in fact, you won't succeed. You're not selling it the right way. And so with that, and also, Axel K said you can't sell anything to a certain kind of person in the world. No, you can. Oh, you can. I promise you something. You think that guy originally had the mindset he does right now? No, he was sold on it. Honestly, I don't even think, for the large part, that particular person even believes anything they're saying. They just say it because their viewer base wants to hear it, and that's what they're going to say. So that's honestly my opinion on that. And much like anyone can be sold on anything, you could sell, snow to, to an Alaskan. You could sell anything to anyone. You just have to make sure to word it the right way. That's what makes
snow to an Alaskan. Man, that's called a scammer.
Well, you can sell anything to anyone. And I think that this is something important that we have to make sure that the right kind of thing is sold to the right kind of person. And not everyone's going to think the same way. So you have to do it the right way. And I'm just hammering that home because a lot of people don't get that. I promise you this. I promise you all this. You could actually sell the opposite foreign policy or hell, domestic policy to the other side if you worded it the right way. I promise y'all could do that. You just watch and see. Someone will eventually do it, and you'll see everything go flip on its head, and then everyone will go pick the opposite side of whoever's picking what now. You, of course, can't get into that much, but it can happen. It does work, and you never want to rule anything out. You never want to go, this is impossible to do. because that you're just limiting yourself for no reason. Because the Ukrainians could have gone at the beginning of the war. It is impossible for us to even hold the Russians back, and they could have lost immediately. But some people in the Ukrainian government, like Zelensky, showed they had faith, and the Ukrainian military can hold out, and it largely held out just because there was faith. That's the only thing that determined it. They sold the idea to the Ukrainian people there was a chance to go up against the Russians, even if they're called the second best military in the world. We have a chance in hell of stopping them, and they did. That was really the whole reason they stopped them in month one. If they didn't have that kind of mindset and they weren't able to sell the Ukrainian public on something that was completely unfathomable at the time, that the Russians could be defeated in an open conventional war by Ukraine, they would have lost immediately. And so, just to put that out there, as long as you're able to sell something to the public and they can believe in it, it is entirely possible, and there's nothing out of the question. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And also, if you'll like those kinds of words of optimism, I can assure you that as President of the United States, you're going to be hearing words of optimism like that every day. I don't care if you voted for me or not, or if you disagree with me or not. Everyone will end up having a better tomorrow by the end of this day. I can guarantee you that, and we'll always go at it with a mindset like that. There will never be a doom and gloom mindset. There will never be, oh, the other people are screwing us over mindset. There will only be, there's a direction forward, and we're all going to make it there by tomorrow. That's going to be the mindset. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, if Russia were to offer a peace deal where Ukraine only gave up minimal land, should it be considered? 65% said no, never concede any land. 16% said at this stage of the war, yes. 12% said, only if the land loss is nominal. And 7% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say that while I'm pretty much adverse to any deal where Ukraine loses land, if the land loss is only nominal and an insignificant piece of land, then I would say they should consider that. Because, first of all, I gotta preface it with this. Russia is not due or owed any land of Ukraine. Ukraine owns all of their land, and they shouldn't have to give it up. But if it meant giving up just a small little section on the border to save hundreds of thousands of lives, I would say that's at least worth consideration. But Enforcer, what say you?
I feel like the Ukrainian stance should be that no land concessions is the best solution. However, and I have to say that there's a huge contingency here, that's if U.S. support spools up again and European support is able to also step up as well. I think that they should never concede a single inch of ground. But if U.S. support completely stops and the Europeans are not able to step up and fill in the gap that the United States has left, the Ukrainians may be left with an option where the war may be, the war will be winnable, but it won't be winnable in the way we see it now. And then they might have to visit that idea. But I don't think that's an idea they should be visiting right now, because right now, for this moment, the idea of U.S. support starting again is on the horizon still. And I think that they need to keep the mindset that there should be no peace negotiations where they give up any land. They should be intent on taking all of their sovereign lands back from their 1991 borders. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, because in my opinion, I don't think they should give up a thing. But, of course, if support for Ukraine dries up and due to that lack of support, the Ukrainians find it incredibly difficult to conduct an offensive or really any offensive at all, whether it be small or major, then that might have to change a little bit, because otherwise, if they don't get foreign support like we were giving them, that is able to help them conduct offensives and helps them to take back ground, and they're just constantly throwing good men into a meat grinder to get killed every day, and there's no hope of even conducting a successful offensive due to a complete lack of equipment, then at that point, it's going to be somewhat pointless for all these Ukrainian soldiers to continue to die when there is no chance of really getting to push back and take this ground in the first place. So it's a little bit of a very big if. And I think the if is most likely going to lean back in the way of Ukrainian support will begin again. It's just that right now it's hung up and it probably will take another month or two. But I'm very optimistic. I'm sure that everyone in the United States will see the truth of what really is important for the United States, and not only for the United States, but our strategic interests around the world, and support for Ukraine will begin again. I'm very sure of that, because I know that everyone in the United States are rational people. It's just that sometimes they may not see the full picture and may not understand what's the most beneficial at the moment, given the facts they have. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we are fresh out of poll questions. So, before we move into our Super Chat segment, we still have the list of top donors from Sunday night when we ran our fundraiser that we weren't able to call off because we were unable to finish the stream out because of the hacker that got into our account. So, Enforcer, are you ready to call off the list of top donors from Sunday?
Call them out, baby. Call them out.
All right, so up first, we had a $200 donation. We had one from James Hughes and also Murray Peacock, who each donated $200 to the charity of the night. And huge shout out to James and Murray for that. And also shout out to Just Chillin' and Naxus Fox, who each put in a $150. And then we had Snow White SigInt, or Signal Intel, I believe, who put in $100, along with some guy called the Enforcer. Then we had Darren Maynard, who also threw in a $100. Then Old Warrior threw in a $94. And then we had several $50 donations as well. We had the first one from Greg Carrier. Then we had one from Miles Wagner, Panama Floyd, Rated PG, Dad Good, Murray Peacock yet again. Then we had one from James Hughes, LSA Sergeant Figment, Peter, and Axel K. And huge shout out to you all once again. I'm really upset that we weren't able to finish the Sunday night stream. That threw me off kilter very badly, not being able to call y'all off. And also, thank you to everyone else who donated as well, because it was a very record fundraiser, actually, even though we only ran it for a short little while. So, huge thanks to you all once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I say thank you to every single one of y'all who have made that fundraiser possible. We raised $4.4 thousand in 40 minutes, just about, roughly. And that is unbelievable to think about, and incredible to know that although we ran into huge troubles that night, and the fate of this channel was actually in question when we were going off air, the Lee Spring Army still was doing its damnedest to make sure that we were supporting Ukraine. That is truly amazing and unthinkable to know that the Lee Spring Army was still able to not only meet our $3,000 goal, but surpass it by nearly $1.4 thousand. Every single one of y'all deserves a huge pat on the back and a massive amount of thanks, not just from us, but also the folks in Ukraine who benefit from those fundraisers and the nonprofits who were helped out with that, because y'all make it possible every single weekend for the Lee Spring Army to say that we still hold the banner high, we are still raising massive amounts of support for Ukraine, and we've never missed a fundraiser goal yet. Y'all are the ones who've made that possible, and I have to thank every single one of y'all that we called out, and all the people that we weren't able to call out, because each and every one of y'all, whether the donation be $1, whether the donation be thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, y'all all made that possible. And so thank you to each and every one of y'all so much once again, and I hope we were able to give y'all the proper praises y'all deserve tonight, instead of what we did on Sunday, which is have to quickly get off air to try and stop someone from possibly deleting our YouTube channel. But with that, thank you to everyone so much once again, and we are on to that next one, if you know what I mean.
All right. And we are. And moving on into our Super Chat segment, after calling off the top donors from Sunday, our first one goes to Monkey Madness, who throws in a $30 donation. And huge shout out to you, Monkey, for that support. And he said $1 due per orbit. And stay safe, LSA, and see you all again. Maybe. No, maybe there will be an absolute yes.
And there will be an absolute yes, Monkey Madness, and thank you for the support. And thank you so much for $1 due per orbit. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I think that means that it's Monkey Madness's birthday.
Is it? How'd you get that?
Because he says $1 due per orbit. You know, everyone says, oh, you know, birthday, another orbit, we've made it, you know. I think it's Monkey Madness's 40th birthday.
Interesting. I'll have to get confirmation of that, because I've never heard that phrase before.
If it is, happy birthday. If it isn't, thank you for the support. Either way.
Well, happy birthday anyway, even if it isn't. Yeah. It's like his birthday every day like mine.
Yeah, happy birthday to Monkey Madness. And also, thank you so much once again for telling everyone in the Lee Spring Army to stay safe. I hope you all do stay safe. And we will see you again tomorrow, Monkey Madness. I want to see you here every day. I want to see all of y'all here every day. Y'all add a lot to this channel, and I love to see every single one of y'all in here every single night. We get to see so many of y'all night after night, and y'all are all very interesting and very unique. I get a little bit of a kick saying that, because I know what each and every one of y'all is going to say and do at this point. We've gotten to know a lot of y'all incredibly well, and I thank you all for always being here and always just keeping us company as we continue to go through and count the days and cover the news of the war, because it means a lot to us that all of y'all are here. You know, and it doesn't have to be the most eventful day of the Ukraine war every single day for us to all just appreciate the fact that y'all are still here and y'all still care about Ukraine. You know, it doesn't have to be a Kherson or a Balaklia counteroffensive every single time that we're on air. But nevertheless, whether it is or isn't one of those days, y'all are always here. And I think that means a great deal. And it shows a lot of care and compassion from y'all, because one thing I've started to notice, and it's something that we thought was affecting us a good bit, because, you know, we thought we were getting shadow banned. And I've got to say, I'm kind of revisiting that, because we rarely ever look at other YouTube channels nowadays. We kind of just hear in passing from y'all what's going on out there in the world. But I took a little bit of a survey of all of the other Ukraine war channels out there and looked at, you know, how much viewership they were getting. And some of them are getting like 40% or even 30% of the viewership they used to get. Almost every single one of them are. And it's a little bit crazy to see that, because one, it happened so quick, and two, so many channels that used to get, you know, like several 100,000 views or 1 million views a video, they're now getting like 300 and 400,000, or if they got like 200,000, they're getting like 40 something to 50 something thousand views. And when compared to that kind of drop off, it's unbelievable. It's actually incredible to see. The Lee Spring Army has continued on almost the same size it was before the drop off, which was crazy to me. I mean, I don't know if it was crazy to you, Matthew, but looking around, I was like, oh my God. I was like, you know, we thought we were shadow banned. We were actually quite lucky indeed. But anyways.
Indeed, we were lucky. Very lucky.
Indeed. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Drunky Monkey. And of course, we appreciate to see all of y'all here every single night. And I love to know that even when other channels have appeared to have just dropped off about most of their viewers, this channel still continues on with the same viewers we had before. And thank you so much once again, everyone, for being here tonight. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Marion Deemer, who throws in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, once again for that support. And Marion says, wishing the LSA a very Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas to you too. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
And Merry Christmas to you, Marianne Deemer. It's something I actually haven't been able to talk about much this year. We just haven't had a lot of opportunities to bring up that. It's almost Christmas on this stream. But I hate that, because Christmas is my favorite holiday of the year. I love Christmas. Christmas is just the best. And I wish every single one of y'all a Merry Christmas. I hope y'all have a great one. I hope y'all are able to hang out with family, and y'all are able to remember what life is about, which is always about kindness and caring. You know, those are some very good traits to have and some great attributes to have. And so thank you so much once again, Marion Deemer, for wishing us Merry Christmas, and I wish you one as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to George Tincher as well as William Jones, who each put in a $10 donation without a comment. And George and also William got mixed up there. I almost said Tim for some reason. Thank you very much, George and William, for that support. And we do appreciate it very much, as y'all help to keep us running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank both of y'all so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all's support has made it possible for us to keep rolling. And I got to thank you all so much once again, because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And while y'all's comments didn't say anything, y'all's support helps us to stay on air and continue to say a lot about what's going on over there and make sure the support for Ukraine continues. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Harvey the Drummer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you as well, Harvey, very much for that support. He says that Russian car looks like Lightning McQueen and also Baymax got it on. Got it on in a dark alley and created this abomination. I'm back, baby. Praise the LSA.
Hey, welcome back, Harvey the Drummer. And also, I'd have to agree with you. That thing looks just wrong. Whatever happened to it was bad. It looks like it may have been shaken or something. I mean, it just looks terrible. This thing's ugly. And I hate to show it to y'all again, because I know the revulsion and revile in the live chat is just going to be horrendous. But nevertheless, thank you so much.
Ciao.
Kerchoo! But so, thank you so much once again for the support, Harvey the Drummer, and bringing up this godless abomination in the chat again. It's just ugly. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, we've got a super chat from Butchie777. He puts in a $20 donation. And thank you as well, Butchie, for that support. And Butchie said, could Putin prefer his men to die in Ukraine rather than return home and tell everyone how bad things are going and maybe undermine his power, like a paranoid Stalin after World War II, sending his veterans to the Gulag?
It could be possible that he's thinking that, especially after the Wagner coup. That could certainly be a massive motivator mentally for Putin to make sure that the war keeps going. But at the same time, this would be very similar if they lost. to the Finnish Winter War of 1939 because it didn't really threaten Stalin's power. It's just that it greatly depleted the Soviet army and it also made him look like an idiot. Those things weren't detrimental to his leadership. He continued to be the premier of the Soviet Union until 1953 when he died of a stroke. So he could possibly just end the war with like a white peace or something like the Finnish Winter War ended with. And it wouldn't actually have that much of an effect on his reign, but there's still a great possibility it could, because the Wagner coup already showed that the Russian leadership is somewhat fragile and weak, and may not be able to stand up to a concerted push against it. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question, by the way, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, also known as Sarge, who leaves a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Sarge, for that support. He says, have you seen the vid of the Merkava trophy system in action? If not, it's posted on my X page. And please take a look if you have a spare second. And also below that is the patch of the 35th Brigade, and way cool.
And thank you so much for supporting. But way cool. And let me make sure to go check that out. Let's go check her out. So let's see here. Oh, wait a minute, let me check it out. I'm watching it here, and then I'll show it on screen.
Jack.
Whoa, Jack. Whoa. Oh, that's really cool. And also, the 35th Brigade's patch is really neat. Also, by the way, everyone, I know some people have been asking tonight before we even get to that clip, why are we not covering Middle East news anymore? We're not covering anymore because on a day-to-day basis, there isn't really enough video and picture evidence coming out for us to make news on. We were getting down to like 3 clips of news a day for the entire news segment, and usually we like to have a healthy at least 15 clips to go off of, and that's the minimum. Usually the ideal number is around 25 to 30, so it got so low we could hardly make a news segment on it. It was just kind of like detached clips in another part of the world. So unfortunately, we have ended up cutting that news segment, at least temporarily, until the news and video evidence picks up again, which I'm still checking out on a day-to-day basis, and then we'll probably add it once there's more news to cover again. So luckily that's kind of subsided, because that was looking like it was possibly a major conflict in the Middle East brewing up, and it looks like it's kind of subsided enough to where it's just a conflict in between Israel and Gaza. But moving back into this, check out this trophy system. Man, they gave that thing the slow-mo treatment. And there was a trophy system at work right there. Blasted the incoming projectile, the RPG right there. Blew it up before it hit the tank, and the tank just kept going. Like a bus. That's just
like a boss.
Man, look at that. That was actually really impressive. And that RPG shot was dead on. That is cool.
That is cool. They get a trophy for ingenuity.
And also, here's the patch of the 35th Paratrooper Brigade of the IDF. Really cool.
Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know about that one. Like, that that one isn't cutting it for me.
Man, I like it. I like that thing. You know,
it's different. That snake, I don't know. Like, that snake isn't right. So, Tommy, that boy ain't right.
Bobby, that boy ain't right. Tommy.
Well, I don't know what my deal is. I said Tim tonight by accident, and I was saying Tommy. What's the deal? I'm seeing Tommy Two Tokes in the live chat. I think that's what's messing me up.
Maybe, perhaps it is, but I like it. You know why, Matthew? Because this thing looks like it's coming down going, it looks like it's going to eat you like a dog. I like that. It's got that dog in it, or more so, it's got that snake in it. And you know, eat like snake. But anyways, I like the patch. I respect the patch. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support, LSA Sergeant Figment, and thank you for being a sergeant here in the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have 2 super chats from Steve T, who throws in a $10 donation. And thank you, Steve, twice for that support. The first one says, if they give up land for peace, they need to become a NATO member and have financial auditing and money from Russia to rebuild Ukrainian regions, and lower Western support is forcing those.
And I thank you for the support, Steve. And I would have to say, as far as that first one goes, in a peace agreement like that, you probably wouldn't be able to get the Russians to finance Ukrainian restructuring. And honestly, you wouldn't want it, because it's giving the Russians large financial ties to the Ukrainians. We want to have large financial ties to them, so it's better for us to put in the money, because in the end, it's an investment that we end up getting to reap the rewards off of. So we'd actually want Western nations to invest into Ukraine instead. The other thing is that I would have to agree, if Ukraine did end up giving land, I feel like that would have to be with a NATO guarantee that they would be brought into NATO and possibly the European Union as well, although that would have to be separately negotiated with the European Union. But I would have to agree with you. I could see that as a route if things started going that way and they had to do something where they gave up land. I think it should be with a guarantee of NATO ascension and also EU ascension as well, along with a decent portion of Western support and investing. That's the one thing I'll have to disagree on there, in my opinion, because you always have to make sure to make a nation your friend, you have to put some money into them. And also, it helps out with a lot of economic stimulus, because American investments usually come with American investment firms with it. And American investment firms are, interestingly enough, really good at growing a national economy. We can see that they were able to do that with TSMC in Taiwan. We also did that in West Germany. It was called the West German Miracle because the German economy recovered so quickly with some American investment through the Marshall Plan and also some American investment firms trying to start up German industry. And we also saw that a little bit with the Japanese economy, although theirs was more so independently grown instead of grown with U.S. investment groups. But nevertheless, it came with a lot of U.S. funding and a lot of U.S. support. So I would say that would probably be the best way to do it. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for support, Steve. And let's hear the second one.
And Steve's second super chat, not super chat. This one says Ukraine could recover some hardware over the river with sending recovery vehicles, parts, and a portable engineer team, and they could steal some too, and the ammo.
Interesting idea. Interesting. That would be a very tough process. And they possibly could do it, but trying to break down a vehicle so perfectly would be really difficult because the hull and the turret would still be pretty large, even if you disassembled them as best you could. The turret is actually one large cast, so you wouldn't really be able to cut that up much unless you took like an actual what the hell would you use on that thing, Matthew? Like a plasma torch? You would have to take a plasma torch to that thing and then cut it up. And then if you tried to re-weld that, the welds might create weak points in the turret or brittle points where the turret could start to collapse if it got hit by something. But you could try and do that. Especially if you got a big enough boat in the area, you could just start ferrying parts over and just start rebuilding them on the northern side or the right bank of the river. So that's an interesting idea. And I think maybe the Ukrainians will like to do that, especially if resources start to get a little tough. Maybe they could try and pull that off and get some extra vehicles that way. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, twice, Steve, and throwing in some interesting ideas and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you are old guards of this channel and have also made this possible for so long. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Epic Trains Canada. It throws in a 5 and says, glad the channel is safe, and add this to your snack fund. And Igor, Slava Ukraine.
Igor, chaka, Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support. And adding that to our snack fund, we're going to be getting some sardines, which are very good. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you who throw in some support to our snack fund make this thing possible. And thank you so much for enjoying that the channel is safe. And also, Epic Trains Canada, thank you for being first in the live chat tonight. You were the first person there. And I got to thank you for that, because I remember saying you were first. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And hello to Stefan. Welcome back. I haven't seen you in a minute, I don't think. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one also goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who offers to let us jump if we want to, if we ever go to Israel. And if we ever go to Israel, to be honest with you, I will probably take you up on that offer, because I'm kind of curious about that. I'll probably be scared to death, but I'm willing to try.
Man, you know, actually, funnily enough, Matthew, I kidded around with our friends about skydiving one time. I was like joking with them, but they actually like entertained the idea a little bit. They were like, skydiving. I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. I was like, I'm kidding. I would never do that. I don't want to die.
I would actually try it if I knew that the parachute was like rigged properly and everything. I would actually be willing to try it. But you know, I like to do like the exciting stuff like that, like the race and stuff like that. Anything where the adrenaline gets going, I kind of like that kind of stuff.
Man, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna become a war tourist. You know? Oh yeah, what a rush! But anyways,
man, we know more crimes. I'm telling you.
You know, we know people like that, Matthew. You know, people who love to, go over, take some photos, and pretend like they're heroes. You know, we know some people like that. But anyways, well, and I'm not even kidding. I actually found out about one of those people in person. Like, it was literally a whatchamacallit. Who the hell was that guy, Matthew, who hung out in Lviv and racked up like a multi-$1,000 liquor bill? What's his name?
Can't remember the guy's
James
name,
Vasquez.
but he went. Oh yeah, that's him.
Yeah, I actually found out about a real James Vasquez in real life because one of the gun stores that we've been working with locally, they ended up having someone who would come in and they just swore up and down that they were at the Battle of Mariupol. And I was like, that's kind of a little difficult to be at the Battle of Mariupol as a foreign volunteer and end up getting out. And so then the guy ended up giving a picture to a fellow at the gun store, and I ended up getting a hold of it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, "There's no way in hell that picture was taken in Mariupol." So I ended up doing some looking through our archives of footage and pictures that we had when we ran the channel, and it turns out that the picture is actually of a destroyed tank that was in Bazova, right here on the Zhytomyr highway, that was destroyed sometime in, I think it was like mid-March. And the picture was dated to like late May because they were already like stripping the tank down to most of its parts and getting it ready to be towed elsewhere, probably to like a scrapyard. So, and also the picture was like heavily photoshopped. I was like, oh my god! I was like, this guy just came up with like a whole fake story and everything about this. And it was crazy because I'd never actually known that there was people around who just lie about that kind of stuff like that. But apparently, there's plenty of James Vasquez's out there. But anyways. With that, I hope that does address it well. Just wanted to share with y'all a little story there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one also goes to... Wait a minute, did we ever read off LSA Sergeant Figment's? We didn't ever read off his super chat, actually.
No.
Like, we just talked about the jumping. But anyways, Sarge said, I got so excited on Sunday because my $50 donation is what put us over the $3,000 goal. Right as that happened, we were hacked. Those damn Ruskies, I'm telling you.
Them damn Russians. And also, I gotta thank you for the support once again, LSA Sergeant Figment. And I hate that we weren't able to call that out. And of course, I hope that everyone does understand. I hope you also understand, LSA Sergeant Figment. The existence of the channel was a danger at that point, so we sadly had to end without giving credit. But I got to thank you so much once again. I hope we were able to give you some credit tonight, and I also thank you for throwing in that $50 donation that threw us over that mark, because folks like you make it possible, not only for this channel to keep running, but also for our fundraisers to keep surpassing goals massively. And so thank you so much once again, and thank you for being an LSA Sergeant of the Figment. And so with that, and I don't know why I just stuttered right there, but with that, we were on to the next one.
All right, and finally, a blast. Shout out to Matt Scher, who puts in a $2 donation without a comment. And thank you very much, Matt, for that support. And with that being said, we are now moving into our live chat questions of the night. And first off, we have our Morse code decoders of the stream as usual. Tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and also David Millsaps. And they said the Morse code decipher says Russian forces are praying that they won't freeze this winter, and long live the LSA. Ding, 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 ding.
And ding, 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 ding. That's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to thank y'all for getting that correct on the 664th day of the war. We are getting very close to day 700, and I'm completely amazed that we have Morse code decoders nearly 700 days after the war started that are still getting the messages. And so with that, thank y'all once again, and we are on to the live chats proper. We're actually going to be able to answer live chats for about the next 6 minutes or so because of reasons. So with that, we're on to the first one.
All right, and the first one goes to Murray Peacock, who says, we are now in the delivery and training window for the F-16s, and has there been any indication on when these might be made available?
Sadly not. I think a lot of that information is also being kept out of the press for the most part, and also out of the public sphere of information, so that way the Russians don't really have an exact timetable of when to make it seen. I'm sure those are actually going to quietly enter Ukraine, as much as that's possible, so that way, by the time the Russians start to complain, there's really nothing they can do because they'll already be in Ukraine. So sadly, we don't have a lot of information on that at the moment. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Dale Alaticus, who says, Enforcer, what weapon will be the first to be reviewed?
The first weapon to be reviewed on this channel will be the AK-74, specifically a Bulgarian AK-74, because that was the closest one we could get to the Soviet pattern of AK. Each AK is made a little differently from the Soviet Union to the Warsaw Pact nations, so we wanted to get the one that was almost identical to the Soviet AK-74, so that one would be the AK, the Bulgarian AK, because it was literally almost made almost identically to a Soviet pattern. So we wanted to get the control variant, the best one we could, and so the Bulgarian one was our AK of choice. So that will be the first one. The second one will be the P90, which is kind of ironic because we already have the thumbnail done for that one, and it's going to be the one coming out next. We plan on releasing maybe one of them a week, and if y'all really like them, considering that we film them in groups of 2, we may move it up to 2 guns a week, although that might be pushing it. So it's probably going to be about 1 gun a week. Also, so that way we can stagger them enough so that we will have content and footage to continue to release while law school is on, because I know our filming schedule is going to be shattered once law school begins. It may even stop completely, so we want enough footage lined up that we can end up keeping videos coming out for a month or a month and a half when we're not even filming them. So with that, hope that does address that well. And also, Panama Floyd said, machine or stamped steel? It is not machined, because the Bulgarians, I don't think, ever made machined AKs, from what I know, at least AK-74s. It's stamped. So it is that real Soviet quality. It's the most accurate representation we could find. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one, it goes to Bobo Uzela, who says, is it true that there was an attempt to poison General Zaluzhny?
That is true. We didn't cover that tonight because we didn't really get a lot of information out of it, and it was just an attempt. We didn't really hear that it turned into much, but apparently there was an attempt. And they also found bugs in his office. And I got to tell you, sometimes I have bugs in my office. Oh, man, I'm pulling out the roach spray, though. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Jeffrey, who says, how long can Ukraine fight if U.S. aid ceases?
Probably indefinitely. It just won't be that it won't be possible for them to conduct any offensives, probably, that are of a large scale. They'd probably be able to only conduct small-scale offensives with some kind of success, and any large-scale offensives that they would try and conduct would only be knocking out a decent amount of their armor that they would have to rely on for however long this war would continue. So if U.S. support stops, this war could go on forever, but it's pretty much going to become a exclusively defensive war for Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to David Kendall, who says, did you hear about the mother who is running for Russian office?
I did not hear about the mother that's running for Russian office, mostly because we try and keep out of politics as best as possible. I'm just kidding. I haven't heard about her because I don't really focus a lot on the Russian political sphere, so honestly, I would just have to declare ignorance on that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dreaming Historian, who says, do you believe that Russian internal opposition is minimal due to state control or due to collaboration of the populace? And I'd say it's a bit of both to an extent.
Can you reread that again?
Yeah, they said, do you believe that Russian internal opposition is minimal due to state control or due to collaboration of the populace? And I'd say it's a bit of both to an extent.
I would say it's a bit of both, but I also feel like it's a lot of oppression from the Russian government, because we see a lot of political dissidents that aren't pro-Putin just end up getting arrested or killed. So I would also say it's probably both, but mostly just oppression from the Russian central government. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Angry Penguin, who asks, do you think that's why I got muted that one day, or do you think it was still a shadow ban? And Angry Penguin, I will tell you that not only were you messed up in the live chat, you couldn't talk, somebody else was as well that I still haven't been able to fix yet, which I don't know what to do at this point. So I've applied the same fix I applied to you to get you back into live chat, and it didn't work for them. And then the night that I sort of was led on to the hacking attempt, I was actually banned out of the live chat, and I couldn't speak at all either. And I was removed as a moderator, and also I was blocked from the chat. So that's what luckily cued us in to somebody had gotten into our account. Luckily, they somehow were not able to change the password in time to lock us out, which is a blessing, because if they could have done that, we'd have been totally screwed. So, you know, that was probably the reason why you got muted in the live chat as well. And we'll have to go back and check and make sure nobody else was tampered with either, because it seems like they were on a warpath, whoever it was. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that Matthew answered that so well, I really don't have an answer to it. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person with the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Bike92, who says, how many amphibious BTR-4s or similar vehicles are available to cross the Dnipro for the bridgehead?
From what we understand, there are a lot of BTR series APCs in Ukrainian service. BTR-4s, though, are in more limited numbers. We think there's around 70 to 100 of them in operation at the moment, but that's just based off of very loose numbers and approximations that have been given to the public, and we really don't know because they're constantly in the process of taking old BTRs and trying to convert them into BTR-4s. So I would say around 70 to 100 of them are possibly usable, but in reality, that number is probably knocked down to around maybe 15 because so many others are in other brigades that are active on other parts of the front line, and stripping them of those BTRs may start to put them into compromised positions when going up against the Russian forces. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And before we move on to the end of the stream, I see a lot of y'all bringing up recommendations for interesting rifles like the Hakim rifle from Egypt. And I would love to do reviews. Sadly, we have not been able to find people who have all of these guns. But if y'all ever want us to review a gun, we will try and find a way to possibly have the gun sent here, where we can review it and then send it back to y'all. I don't know how that's really going to work. I have seen other gun channels get guns from people and then they end up reviewing them. I don't know if we would have to be an FFL to do something like that, because if so, that's probably going to be out of the question. Or if we could just get that transferred to us, you know, where we don't own it, but we were just, you know, in like possession of it for a while and we get to review it and then send it back to y'all. I'll have to try and figure out how that works, because if y'all have something y'all want us to review and it's, you know, not like a machine gun or anything, that would probably be a bit of an issue to, you know, just mail to us, we would be more than happy to do that. We would be more than happy to try and review every single gun we could and talk about them a little bit, because we got to see a breakdown, I think it was of the AK-74 video, because Matthew's actually gotten really far into editing at least the talking portion of that today, and I got to look at it, and it's actually looking incredibly good. So, you know, if y'all want anything for us to review, it's not out of the question. We can review it. We just have to have the gun with us. But with that, that is the end of tonight's stream. I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure once again to be able to run the stream for so many of y'all once again on this day of the war. If y'all have enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we run this channel 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night, covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And of course, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next day of the war. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you once again for another great stream. And of course, Slava Ukraine, and good night to all of the LSA critters. And cool,
Yes.
Matt.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.